The silver peaks had not seen sunlight in 3 days. Storm clouds hung over the mountains like funeral shrouds, pregnant with snow that refused to fall. The wind howled through jagged rock formations, carrying with it the smell of sulfur and old magic, the unmistakable scent of dragon. Garret's Steelheart climbed the final ridge, his breath coming in ragged clouds. His armor was battered, dented in a dozen places from the journey up. His great sword, Wormbane, they called it in the songs, hung heavy across his back, the runes along its blade pulsing with a sickly blue light. He was 45 years old. He'd been hunting dragons for 27 of those years. This would be the last one. The lair entrance yawned before him like the mouth of some primordial beast, carved into the mountainside by claws larger than a man. The opening was wide enough to swallow a cathedral. Ice clung to its edges, and from deep within came a sound that made Garret's scarred hands tighten on his sword's hilt. Breathing, slow, deep, the breath of something vast and ancient. One more, Garret told himself, forcing his legs to move forward. Just one more, and it's finished. The dragons will be gone, the world will be safe. He'd been telling himself that for 5 years now, ever since the Great Purge began, ever since the King's decree. Dragons are an existential threat to humanity. They must be eradicated. Every last one. Garret had believed it, had to believe it. The alternative, that he'd spent his entire adult life murdering sentient beings, was unthinkable. He entered the lair. The darkness swallowed him whole, and for a moment, the only sound was his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Then his eyes adjusted, and he saw it. The Horde, mountains of gold and silver, gemstones the size of human skulls, ancient weapons and armor from civilizations long dead. The wealth of kings, accumulated over centuries. It should have been breathtaking. Garret barely glanced at it. His eyes were locked on the creature at the center of the chamber. Zephyra, the great silver dragoness, the last of her kind. She was colossal. Even coiled, her body took up half the cavern. Her scales were like polished moonlight, each one the size of a dinner plate. Her wings, folded against her sides, could have blotted out the sun. Her horns swept back from a skull that was equal parts elegant and terrifying. And her eyes, ancient, intelligent, knowing eyes, were open and fixed on Garret. "You have come, little slayer." Her voice didn't emerge from her mouth. It resonated in Garret's mind, in his bones, in the very air around him. The language was older than human civilization, draconic, the tongue of creation itself. But Garret understood it. All slayers did. You couldn't kill dragons without learning their language. "I have," Garret said, drawing Wormbane. The sword sang as it left its sheath, its runes blazing brighter. For what purpose? Greed, glory, duty? For the safety of humanity. The words came automatically, rehearsed over decades. Dragons are too dangerous to live. You know this. Dangerous. The dragoness shifted, and the movement sent gold coins cascading like waterfalls. "Yes, we are dangerous, as are storms, as is fire, as is the sea. Yet you do not hunt storms, little slayer. You do not wage war against the ocean." "Storms don't burn villages," Garret said, circling slowly. His eyes scanned the chamber, looking for weak points, for tactical advantages, old habits. "Storms don't hoard wealth while people starve." "And we do?" There was something like sadness in her mental voice. "You believe the stories they tell you, the lies. We were here first, little slayer. Before your kingdoms, before your cities, before your kind learned to walk upright. We shaped this world. And when your ancestors were weak and afraid, we protected them." "Things change," Garret said coldly. You're a relic of a dead age. The world has moved on." So it has. The dragoness's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, they held something Garret had never seen in a dragon before. Acceptance. "You will kill me. This I know. I have seen it in the flames, in the patterns of the stars. I have lived 7 centuries, little slayer. I am tired, and I am the last." Something in Garret's chest twisted painfully, but he ignored it. He'd felt pity before, for his prey. It always passed once the battle began. "Then you know resistance is futile," he said, raising Wyrmbane. "Resistance? No." The dragoness rose to her full height, and Garret felt his courage waver. She was magnificent, terrible, and beautiful in equal measure. "Not resistance, but I will not die without purpose." She lunged. The battle was brutal. Saphira was old, but age had made her cunning, not weak. She didn't rely on brute strength or overwhelming firepower. She fought like a chess master, every move calculated, every strike purposeful. Her tail swept through the horde, sending a wave of gold and treasure crashing toward Garret. He dove, rolled, came up running. Her claws raked the stone where he'd been standing, gouging furrows 3 feet deep. Garret struck back, Wyrmbane's enchanted edge biting into her foreleg. Silver blood, luminescent, almost glowing, spattered the ground. The dragoness roared, and the sound shook the mountain. They fought for an hour, or maybe it was minutes. Time lost meaning in the chaos of combat. Garret's armor was shredded. His left arm hung useless, broken in 3 places. Blood ran down his face from a gash across his forehead, partially blinding him. But dragons, for all their power, had weaknesses, and Garret had spent his entire life learning them. He feinted left, drew Zephyra's attention, then rolled right, and drove Wyrmbane up through the softer scales beneath her jaw, into the brain. The dragoness's roar became a gurgle. Her massive body convulsed once, twice, then collapsed with a sound like a falling mountain. Garret pulled his sword free and staggered back, gasping for breath. It was done. The last dragon was dead. He should have felt triumph, relief, something. Instead, he felt nothing, just a vast, yawning emptiness. The dragoness's eyes found his one final time. Her mental voice was faint now, fading like smoke. "Protect her. She is all that remains, my daughter. Please, do not let her be alone." Then the light went out of those ancient eyes, and Zephyra, last of the great dragons, was gone. Garret stood in the silence, alone with his victory and a corpse the size of a house. It was then that he heard it. A sound he couldn't identify at first, high-pitched, rhythmic, coming from deeper in the lair. Crying. No, not crying. Chirping. Garret's blood ran cold. He turned, following the sound past the dragoness's body, past piles of treasure, to an alcove in the back of the cavern. And there, nestled in a bed of silver cloth and heated by residual magic, was an egg, a dragon egg. It was beautiful, pearl white with veins of silver running through it like lightning frozen in stone, about the size of a wine barrel, and it was cracking. "No," Garret whispered. "No, no, no." He'd been told dragons laid eggs only once every century, that they guarded them with their lives, that finding a dragon egg was nearly impossible because the parents hid them so well. He'd been told wrong, or, and this thought hit him like a fist to the gut, Saphira had allowed herself to be found, had wanted Garret to come here, had sacrificed herself to protect her child, and her last words, "Protect her." The egg cracked wider. A piece of shell fell away. Then another. Garret couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He stood frozen, sword hanging loose in his hand as the egg broke apart. Steam rose from within. A tiny sound, a whimper almost, emerged, and then from the ruins of the shell, something crawled out. Not a dragon hatchling, a baby, a human baby. She was tiny, newborn, or close to it. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent in the dim light. Her eyes, vertical pupils in pools of silver, blinked up at him, and her hair, fine as silk, was the color of moonlight. She looked at Garret and made a sound, not a cry, not a dragon's roar, a giggle, a baby's giggle. Garret's sword clattered to the ground. Dragons could take human form. The knowledge hit him like a collapsing building. It had been rumored, whispered in legends, but never confirmed. The Order of Dragon Slayers had dismissed it as myth. They'd been wrong. The creatures Garret had spent 27 years hunting, killing, murdering, they'd been people, sentient beings who could think, feel, love, who could take human shape, and he'd killed them all. "Oh gods," Garret choked out, sinking to his knees. "Oh gods, what have I done?" The baby, the dragon child, reached out toward him with tiny, perfect fingers. From somewhere behind him came a sound like a cat yawning. "Well, well, this is awkward." Garret's head snapped around. Sitting on a pile of gold coins, casually licking one paw, was a fox, or something that resembled a fox. It was cat-sized, with fur the color of autumn leaves and eyes like molten amber. Its tail was on fire, literal fire, burning with orange and gold flames that didn't seem to consume anything. Ember, his familiar, the fire spirit he'd bonded with 15 years ago. Congratulations, hero." Ember's voice echoed in his mind, dripping with sarcasm. "You've just become the unluckiest dragon slayer in history. Killed the mother, got stuck with the baby. Classic tragic irony. The bards are going to have a field day with this one." "Ember," Garret said, his voice hollow. "She's the egg. It was a baby?" "Yeah, I noticed." Ember stretched, her burning tail leaving small scorch marks on the gold. "Surprise! Turns out dragons aren't mindless monsters. They're people. Who knew?" She paused, her amber eyes fixing on Garret with something that might have been sympathy. "Well, you knew. Deep down, you just didn't want to admit it." Garret looked at his hands. They were covered in silver blood, dragon blood, the blood of a mother protecting her child. The baby made another sound, a happy coo, and reached for him again. And Garret Steelheart, legendary dragon slayer, hero of the realm, slayer of the last dragons, made a choice. He picked up the child. She was warm in his arms, impossibly light. She grabbed his finger with tiny hands and held on, her silver eyes looking up at him with perfect trust. "What have I done?" Garret whispered again. "You've become a father," Ember said dryly. "And unless you plan to leave an infant to die in a cave, which, by the way, would be a new low even for you, you're about to have the world's worst parenting experience." Garret looked down at the child in his arms, at the last dragon, at the living proof of his greatest sin. "Protect her," Zephyra had said. "I will," Garret said quietly. "I swear it. I'll protect her. I'll raise her. I'll—" "Lie to her?" Ember suggested. "Hide what she is? Hope she never finds out you murdered her mother?" "I don't know," Garret admitted. The weight of what he'd done was crushing. "I don't know anything anymore." The baby yawned, revealing tiny, perfectly human teeth. Then her eyes drifted closed, and she fell asleep in his arms, completely at peace. Garret stood in the lair of the last dragon, holding the last dragon child, and felt his entire world crumble around him. He'd spent 27 years as a hero. Now he was a monster, and there was no going back. "Well," Ember said, hopping down from her perch and padding toward the exit, her tail leaving a trail of embers. This is going to be interesting. Come on, Papa Dragon Slayer. Time to go home and figure out how to raise a baby. I'm sure it'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, Garret thought, but he didn't say it aloud. He wrapped the child in his torn cloak, hiding her silver hair and strange eyes from the world. Then, with one last look at Zephyr's corpse, he turned and walked out of the lair. Behind him, the dragoness's body began to glow with soft silver light, ancient magic releasing, returning to the world. The age of dragons was over. The age of lies had just begun. The descent from the silver peaks took 3 days. 3 days of Garret stumbling down treacherous mountain paths with a baby wrapped in his cloak, trying not to think about what he'd done, trying not to remember Zephyr's final words, trying not to look too closely at the infant who slept peacefully against his chest, her tiny heartbeat a constant reminder of his sin. Ember walked ahead, her burning tail providing light in the darkness. She hadn't spoken much since they left the lair, unusual for her. Even fire spirits could sense when silence was necessary. The baby, Garret still hadn't named her, couldn't bring himself to, was surprisingly easy to care for. She rarely cried. When she was hungry, she made a soft, chirping sound, and Garret would feed her goat's milk from his water skin, which she drank eagerly. When she needed changing, well, that part was less pleasant. "You know," Ember said on the second night as Garret attempted to clean the baby with a torn piece of cloth, "in all my centuries of existence, I never thought I'd watch a legendary warrior struggle with infant excrement. It's humbling, really." "Shut up," Garret muttered. "No, truly. You've killed 17 dragons, faced down armies, survived wounds that would kill lesser men. But one tiny human, well, dragon, and you're completely helpless. It's poetic." I said shut up. "I'm just saying, if your enemies could see you now." "Ember," the firefox's ears flattened. "Fine. But when she's older and asks why her first few weeks of life were spent in damp caves eating questionable milk, I'm telling her it was your fault." Garret didn't respond. He finished cleaning the baby and wrapped her back in the cloak. She grabbed his finger again. She always did that, held on to him like he was the only solid thing in a shifting world, and his chest ached. What was he going to do with her? He couldn't keep her, couldn't raise her. He was a dragon slayer. His hands were stained with the blood of her kind. He lived alone in a cabin in the wilderness, surrounded by trophies from his kills, scales, claws, teeth. What kind of life would that be for a child? But he couldn't abandon her either. She was an infant, helpless, and more than that, she was the very last dragon in existence. Because of him, I killed them all, Garret said quietly into the darkness. "Every last one?" "Yes," Ember said. Her voice, usually dripping with sarcasm, was gentler now. "You did. They could think, feel. They had families." "Yes, I murdered them." Ember was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You did what you thought was right. You believed the stories, the propaganda. You thought dragons were mindless beasts who needed to be exterminated for humanity's safety. I was wrong. You were lied to. There's a difference." "Is there?" Garret looked down at the sleeping infant. In the firelight, her silver hair almost seemed to glow. "I still did it. I still killed them. And now you're holding the last one, the evidence of your greatest mistake, the living reminder of your sins." Ember padded closer and sat down beside him, her tail wrapping around her paws. "So what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know." "Well, you better figure it out, because in about 6 hours we'll reach the valley, and you're going to have to explain to the villagers why the famous dragon slayer Garret Steelheart is carrying a baby." Garret's stomach clenched. He hadn't thought about that. Of course, people would ask questions. He was a known figure, a hero of the realm. People would want to know about his latest hunt, about the dragon he'd killed, about the spoils. "I'll tell them I found her," Garret said, "an orphan in a destroyed village, with silver hair and vertical pupils. They won't notice, not if I keep her wrapped up, not if I'm careful." Ember snorted, or the telepathic equivalent of a snort. "Right. Because babies are so easy to hide. This plan is flawless. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Do you have a better idea? Leave her at an orphanage, a temple, literally anywhere that isn't with you?" "No." The word came out harder than Garret intended. The baby stirred in his arms and he softened his voice. "No, I owe her this. Her mother's last words were to protect her, so that's what I'll do. Even though you have no idea how to raise a child, I'll figure it out. Even though she's a dragon and will eventually develop powers you can't control, I'll handle it. Even though the moment anyone discovers what she is, they'll try to kill her." Garret's hand instinctively tightened around the baby. "I won't let them." Ember stared at him for a long moment, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. Then she sighed, a surprisingly human sound from a spirit. "You're an idiot. I know. This is going to end badly. Probably. And you're doing it anyway." "Yes." Ember shook her head. "Fine. But when this all goes horribly wrong, and it will, I'm going to say, 'I told you so,' multiple times, with great satisfaction. I wouldn't expect anything less." The firefox stood and stretched. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be exhausting. You'll need energy for all the lying you're about to do." They reached the village of Thornhaven just after noon the next day. It was a small settlement, maybe 300 people, clustered around a central square with a well. The buildings were timber and stone, sturdy but worn. These were frontier folk, used to hardship. Garret kept his hood up and the baby hidden beneath his cloak as he walked through the streets. People stared. They always did when he came through, but no one approached. There was fear in their eyes, fear and reverence. "The Dragon Slayer," they whispered. "He's returned." Garret went straight to the general store and bought supplies, milk, cloth for diapers, a small basket that could serve as a crib. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with kind eyes, gave him a curious look. "Didn't know you had a child, Master Steelheart," she said. "I don't. Didn't." Garret's voice was rough from disuse. "Found her. Village up north was destroyed. Raiders. She was the only survivor." The lie came easier than it should have. The shopkeeper's expression softened. "Poor thing. Lost her family so young." She added a small blanket to his pile without charging him. "Every child needs something soft. On the house." Guilt twisted in Garret's gut, but he took the blanket. "Thank you." "Will you be keeping her?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Would he? "For now," Garret said. Until I figure out what else to do." The shopkeeper nodded. "If you need help, advice on raising a baby, my daughter has 3 of her own. She'd be happy to—" "I'll manage." The words came out harsher than intended. Garret saw the woman flinch and forced himself to soften. "Thank you, but I'll manage." He left quickly before she could ask more questions. Ember was waiting outside, sitting on a fence post and grooming her tail. "Smooth, very smooth. You definitely didn't look suspicious at all. Quiet. I'll manage." "Really? You can't even figure out which end of a diaper goes where." "I said quiet." They left the village and headed north, toward Garret's cabin. It was a 3-hour walk through dense forest, a path Garret had walked 1,000 times. The trees grew thicker here, older, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out most of the sun. It was peaceful, isolated, perfect for a man who wanted to be alone, or for a man hiding something. The baby woke about halfway through the journey. She didn't cry, she never really cried, but she made soft sounds and looked around with those strange silver eyes, taking in the world with an infant's fascination. Garret found himself watching her, studying her features. She looked human, completely human except for the hair and the eyes. How was that possible? Dragons were massive, scaled, winged. How could they become this? Shapeshifting is one of the oldest magics, Ember said, reading his thoughts. Dragons were masters of it. They could take any form they wished. Most preferred their true forms, more powerful, more impressive. But when they needed to walk among humans, they became human. Why? Garret asked. Why would they want to walk among us? Why does anyone want to understand their neighbors? Curiosity, loneliness, love. Ember's tail flickered. Dragons lived for centuries, millennia, some of them. That's a long time to be alone. Some of them bonded with humans, fell in love, had children. Half-dragons? Dragonborn they were called. Humans with dragon blood. They had extended lifespans, enhanced strength, sometimes minor magical abilities. Most of the great heroes of legend were dragonborn. Garret absorbed this. Another piece of history he'd never been taught. Another truth hidden by the Order. Did the Order know, he asked, that dragons could be human? Some of them must have, the leaders at least, but they kept it secret. Easier to kill monsters than people. Then they're as guilty as I am. More so, Ember agreed. You were a weapon. They were the ones who aimed you. That should have made Garret feel better. It didn't. They reached the cabin as the sun was setting. It was small, just 2 rooms, a main area with a fireplace and a sleeping loft above. Garret had built it himself 20 years ago, after his first major dragon hunt. It was supposed to be temporary. He'd never left. The walls were decorated with his trophies, dragon scales, each one the size of a shield, claws mounted like weapons. A massive skull, from his 3rd kill, hung above the fireplace. Garret looked at them now and felt sick. I need to take them down, he said. Probably a good idea. Nothing says safe home for a baby dragon like the dismembered remains of her species decorating the walls. Garret set the baby down in the basket, making sure she was comfortable, then began removing the trophies. Each one felt heavier than it should have. Each one was a life, a person. He piled them outside behind the cabin, where the baby wouldn't see them. It took hours. When he was done, the cabin looked bare, empty, like a different place entirely. Better, Ember said, curling up by the now lit fireplace. Still depressing, but better. Garret sank into his chair, the only piece of real furniture he owned, and watched the baby sleep. She looked peaceful, content, like she trusted him completely. She shouldn't. What do I call her? He asked quietly. Ember's ears perked up. You're actually going to name her? She needs a name. Well, traditionally, dragon names are long and complicated. Zephyra's full name was probably something like Zephyra Kai Ashendara, keeper of the silver winds, daughter of the ancient storm. But that's a bit much for a baby. Something simple then, Garret said. Something human. Why human? Because she's going to grow up human. She needs to fit in. She needs to be safe. Ember was quiet for a moment. Then, Asha. It means hope in the old tongue. Human and dragon both use it. Asha. Garret tested the name. It fit. All right. Asha. As if responding to her name, the baby, Asha, opened her eyes and looked directly at him. For a moment, Garret could have sworn he saw something in those silver depths. Recognition, understanding. Then she yawned, grabbed her own foot, and fell back asleep. "Congratulations," Ember said dryly. "You're officially a father. I give it 3 weeks before you accidentally set something on fire." "She's not going to set anything on fire. She's a dragon. Fire is literally in her DNA. She's a baby. Babies don't have magic. Dragon babies do. Trust me on this." Garret sighed and rubbed his face. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His body ached from the climb down the mountain. His soul ached from everything else. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "No one does. That's what makes parenting fun." "This isn't funny." "Oh, it's a little funny?" Ember's tail swished lazily. The great dragon slayer, reduced to changing diapers and singing lullabies. "If this gets out, your reputation is ruined." "My reputation should be ruined," Garret said bitterly. "I'm a murderer. You're a complicated person who made terrible choices based on incomplete information. Also a murderer, but mostly the first thing." Garret looked at Asha again. She was so small, so fragile. How was he supposed to protect her? How was he supposed to raise her? And when she was old enough to understand, when she asked about her parents, about where she came from, what would he say? The truth would destroy her. The lies would destroy him. "One day at a time," Ember said, as if reading his thoughts. "That's all you can do, one day at a time. And when she's older, when she asks questions, you'll figure it out, or you won't, and it'll be a disaster. Either way should be entertaining." "You're not helping." "I never claimed to be helpful. I'm a fire spirit. We're known for being chaotic and vaguely malicious. It's literally in the job description." Despite everything, Garret almost smiled. Almost. He stood and walked to the basket, looking down at the sleeping child. Asha, the last dragon, his daughter, his greatest sin and his only chance at redemption. "I'll protect you," he whispered. "I swear it. No matter what happens, no matter what it costs, you'll be safe." Asha slept on, unaware of the promise, unaware of the weight of the world her new father was placing on his own shoulders. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of snow. Winter was coming, and with it, the first of many challenges Garret Steelheart was woefully unprepared to face. "So," Ember said, breaking the silence, "got any books on parenting? Instructions? Maybe a manual titled How to Raise a Dragon Child Without Dying?" "No." "Wonderful. This is going to be a complete disaster." "Probably. And you're okay with that?" Garret looked at Asha one more time, then at the fire crackling in the hearth, then out the window at the darkening forest. "I have to be," he said. And in that moment, as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared, Garret Steelheart made a choice. He would raise her, teach her, protect her. He would give her the life her mother had wanted for her, and he would carry the weight of his sins alone, because that was what fathers did, even fathers who didn't deserve the title. 10 years. A decade had passed since Garret Steelheart walked out of the Silver Peaks with a dragon child in his arms. A decade of firsts, first words, first steps, first time accidentally setting the curtains on fire. Ember had been right about that one. The cabin in the woods had changed. It was still small, still isolated, but it was no longer empty. Asha's presence had transformed it from a hermit's refuge into something resembling a home. Crude wooden toys sat on shelves. A small bed had been built in the loft. Drawings, most of them depicting dragons, though Asha didn't know why she was so fascinated by them, covered one wall. And outside, behind the cabin, a training yard had been constructed. Dawn broke over the forest, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Garret was already awake. He was always awake before dawn, standing in the training yard with his arms crossed, watching. Asha was 10 years old now, and she moved through her sword forms with the grace of someone much older. Her silver hair, which Garret had learned to disguise with herbal dyes that lasted a few weeks at a time, was tied back in a practical braid. Her eyes, those telltale vertical pupils, were hidden behind the fact that she rarely made direct eye contact with strangers. She was small for her age, but fast, faster than any human child should be. Dragon blood, Ember had explained. Even in human form, she retained some advantages. Again, Garret said, his voice flat. Asha lowered her practice sword, a wooden blade weighted to feel like real steel, and glared at him. I did it right. You dropped your guard on the third strike. If that had been a real opponent, you'd be dead. If that had been a real opponent, I'd be fighting back, not just running through forms. Garret's expression didn't change. Again, Asha's jaw tightened, but she reset her stance and began the sequence again. Strike, block, pivot, strike. Her movements were precise, economical, exactly as Garret had taught her. But on the third strike, she dropped her guard. Just a fraction. Just for a moment. Garret was there instantly, his own practice sword tapping her ribs. Dead. No excuses. In a real fight, hesitation is death. Mistakes are death. You don't get second chances. His voice was hard, unyielding. Again. Asha's hands clenched around her sword's grip. For a moment, Garret saw something flash in her eyes. Anger, frustration, maybe even a spark of silver light. But she controlled it. She reset, began again. This time she kept her guard up. Better, Garret said, which was the closest he ever came to praise. 20 more repetitions, then we moved to combat drills. 20? Asha's voice rose. Father, I've been training since dawn. I'm exhausted. Exhaustion is when mistakes happen, when your enemy will strike. You train until muscle memory takes over, until you can fight in your sleep. Garret's expression softened, barely. When you can complete a full sequence without dropping your guard once, we'll break for breakfast. Asha groaned, but began again. From the cabin's porch, Ember watched the exchange with her usual air of amused detachment. Her tail swished lazily, leaving small scorch marks on the wood. You know, she said telepathically to Garret, there are other parenting styles. Some people use positive reinforcement, encouragement, the occasional good job. Not now, Ember. I'm just saying, the emotionally distant warrior training his child to be a killing machine approach might be a bit much. She needs to be strong. The world isn't kind. The world also isn't trying to kill most 10-year-olds. She's a child, Garret. She should be playing, making friends, not spending every waking moment preparing for a war that might never come. It will come. Garret's mental voice was hard. When people find out what she is, it will come. And she needs to be ready. Ember didn't respond. They'd had this argument before, many times. It never went anywhere. An hour later, Asha finally completed the sequence without errors. Garret gave a curt nod. Acceptable. Clean your blade and come inside. Asha collapsed onto the ground, breathing hard. Sweat plastered her hair to her forehead, and her arms trembled with exhaustion, but she'd done it. She looked up at Garret, hoping for something more. A smile, a word of approval, anything. He was already walking back to the cabin. Acceptable, Asha muttered bitterly. That's all I ever get. Acceptable, adequate, sufficient. She stabbed her practice sword into the ground. Would it kill him to say, well done, once in a while? He's proud of you, Ember said, materializing beside her. The firefox had a habit of appearing and disappearing at will. He just doesn't know how to show it. How do you know? He never says anything. He barely even talks to me except to criticize. I've known him for 15 years. I can read him. Ember sat down, wrapping her burning tail around her paws. He's terrified, Asha. Every moment of every day. Terrified that he's not doing enough to protect you. Terrified that he's failing you. So he pushes. Because in his mind, if you're strong enough, skilled enough, you'll survive whatever comes. But I don't want to just survive, Asha said quietly. I want to live. I want friends. I want to go to the village, see other people. I'm tired of being alone out here. You're not alone. You have your father and me. You know what I mean? Asha pulled her knees to her chest. The few times we've gone to Thornhaven, I see other kids my age. They're playing, laughing. They have normal lives. Why can't I have that? Ember's expression, as much as a fox could have expressions, turned sad. Because you're not like them, little flame. You're special, and special comes with a price. I don't want to be special. I just want to be normal. Normal is overrated. Trust me. Asha didn't respond. She stood, pulled her practice sword from the ground, and walked toward the cabin. Ember watched her go, then sighed. A very human sound from a decidedly non-human creature. She's growing up, Ember said to Garret telepathically. And she's starting to ask questions. You can't keep her isolated forever. I can try, Garret responded. That's not healthy. For either of you. It's safe. It's a cage, and cages break eventually. What happens when she's old enough to leave on her own? When she decides she's done with your rules? Garret didn't answer, because he didn't have an answer. Inside the cabin, breakfast was a quiet affair. Garret had cooked. He always cooked. Simple but filling meals of porridge, eggs, dried meat. Asha ate in silence, her mind clearly elsewhere. You're distracted, Garret observed. I'm tired. Fatigue makes you sloppy. You need to learn to push through it. Asha's spoon clattered into her bowl. I know, you've told me 1,000 times. Everything is about training, about being stronger, about being ready. Ready for what? Garret's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. For whatever comes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Why? Asha's voice rose. Why do we live out here, away from everyone? Why do you train me like I'm going to war? Why do I have to dye my hair every month? Why? Enough. Garret's voice cut through her questions like a blade. You'll understand when you're older. I'm old enough now. I deserve answers. You deserve to be safe. Garret stood, his chair scraping against the floor. That's all that matters. Safe from what? Garret looked at her then, really looked at her, and Asha saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Pain. Deep, terrible pain. From people who would hurt you if they knew what you were, he said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Asha's anger faltered. What do you mean? What am I? Garret turned away. Finish your breakfast. We have more training this afternoon. Father, finish your breakfast. He walked out, leaving Asha alone with her questions and Ember watching from the corner with sad, knowing eyes. Give him time, Ember said softly. The truth is complicated. Then explain it to me, Asha demanded. You're always making cryptic comments. You and Father both. What aren't you telling me? It's not my truth to tell, little flame. When he's ready, when you're ready, he'll explain. Until then, try to be patient. I'm tired of being patient. Asha stood abruptly, her hand slamming on the table, and as her anger flared, something else flared too. Heat. Ember's ears perked up. Asha, your hands. Asha looked down and gasped. Her palms were glowing, Faint silver light emanated from her skin, and the wood beneath her hands was starting to smoke. What's happening? Calm down. Deep breaths. The magic responds to emotion. You need to control it. Magic? I don't have magic. I'm just... The light intensified. The smoke became visible wisps. The table began to char. Asha, breathe, focus. But Asha was panicking now. The light spread up her arms, and her whole body felt like it was burning from the inside out. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was overwhelming, like something vast and ancient was waking up inside her. The door slammed open. Garret rushed in, took one look at Asha's glowing hands, and moved without hesitation. He grabbed her wrists and plunged them into the water bucket by the door. Steam hissed. The glow faded. Asha gasped, her legs giving out, and Garret caught her. Easy, he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Easy, it's over. You're all right. What was that? Asha's voice shook. What's wrong with me? Garret and Ember exchanged a look. Nothing is wrong with you, Ember said carefully. You're just coming into your power. It happens around your age. Power? What power? I'm not a mage. We can't afford to send me to Magic Academy. You don't need an academy, Garret said. He helped her to a chair and knelt in front of her, his hands on her shoulders. Asha, listen to me. You're different. You've always been different. Special. Special how? Garret's jaw worked. Asha could see the war behind his eyes, the desire to tell the truth fighting against the need to protect her. Finally, he said, Your mother. She was gifted. Powerful. That gift passed to you. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a complete lie either. My mother. Asha's voice was small. You never talk about her. Who was she? Where is she? She's gone. Garret's voice was thick with emotion. She died when you were very young, but she loved you more than anything. Did you love her? The question seemed to catch Garret off guard. He was silent for a long moment, then, yes, in my way. Asha absorbed this, then, and this power, these abilities. What are they? Fire, Ember said bluntly. You have an affinity for fire, like your mother, like me. It's rare, but not unheard of. So I'm a fire mage? Something like that. Can you teach me to control it? Ember and Garret exchanged another look. Then Ember nodded. Yes, but it won't be easy. Fire is temperamental. It responds to emotion, and you, little flame, have a lot of emotions. Despite everything, Asha almost smiled. Is that your way of saying I'm moody? I would never. I'm far too polite. This time Asha did smile. Just a little. Garret stood. We'll work on control. But Asha, this power, you can't show it to anyone. Do you understand? Not in the village, not to strangers. No one can know. Why? Because people fear what they don't understand, and fear makes them dangerous. Asha wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but the look in her father's eyes stopped her. He was terrified, not of her, for her. I understand, she said quietly. Good. Garret's hand briefly touched her hair, an rare gesture of affection. Rest today. Tomorrow we'll begin teaching you to control the flames. He left, and Asha heard him outside, chopping wood with more force than necessary, working out his own fears and frustrations the only way he knew how. Ember curled up beside Asha's chair, her tail providing a gentle warmth. He's doing his best, the firefox said. It may not always feel like enough, but he's doing his best. I know, Asha said. She looked at her hands. Normal again now, no glow, no heat. Ember, what am I really? Not just a fire mage, there's something else. Something you and Father aren't telling me. Ember was quiet for a long time. Then, One day, you'll know everything, but not today. Today, you're just a girl who discovered she has magic. Let that be enough for now." It wasn't enough. Asha knew there was more to the story, more to her story, but she could wait. For now. Outside, Garret buried his axe in a log and leaned against it, breathing hard. 10 years. He'd kept the secret for 10 years. But Asha was growing up, growing stronger, and the magic, her dragon heritage, was beginning to manifest. How much longer could he hide the truth? How much longer before she learned what he'd done? "She'll forgive you," Ember said, appearing beside him. "Eventually. Maybe." "She shouldn't," Garret said. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "Perhaps not. But she's your daughter, and daughters have a way of loving their fathers despite everything." Garret looked back at the cabin, at the home he'd built for a child who didn't know she was the last of a murdered race. "I hope you're right," he said quietly. But hope, like truth, was a fragile thing. And winter was coming. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Garret had lived in these woods for 2 decades. He knew every sound, the rustle of deer moving through underbrush, the call of ravens in the canopy, the skitter of squirrels across bark. This silence was wrong, unnatural. It meant predators, the humankind. He and Asha were 3 miles from the cabin, checking the trap lines they'd set earlier in the week. It was supposed to be a simple task: retrieve whatever game they'd caught, reset the traps, head home before dark. But Garret's instincts, honed by decades of hunting things far more dangerous than rabbits, were screaming at him. "Father?" Asha's voice was quiet. She'd learned to read his moods, his postures. She knew when something was wrong. "What is it?" "We're being watched," Garret said, his hand moving subtly to the sword at his hip. He'd brought wormbane. He always brought wormbane when they left the cabin's immediate vicinity. Old habits. "Stay close. Don't run unless I tell you to." Asha's eyes widened, but she nodded. Her hand moved to the hunting knife at her belt, a small blade, barely 6 inches, but Garret had taught her how to use it. "Bandits," Ember's voice whispered in both their minds. The firefox materialized on a low branch above them, her fur bristling, her tail burning brighter than usual. 8 of them, no, 9, surrounding us. They've been tracking us for the last mile. How did I miss them? Garret thought back. Because you were focused on teaching Asha to identify rabbit tracks. You can't be vigilant every second. I should be. Show yourselves, Garret called out, his voice carrying through the trees. I know you're there. For a moment, nothing. Then laughter, rough, cruel laughter, echoed from multiple directions. Men stepped out from behind trees, 9 of them, just as Ember had said. They were rough-looking, dressed in mismatched armor and carrying weapons that had seen better days. Deserters, probably, or outlaws, the kind of men who preyed on travelers and isolated homesteads. The leader, a tall man with a scarred face and a long sword, grinned at Garret. Well, well, Garret Steelheart, the dragon slayer himself, we're honored. Garret's expression didn't change. Leave, now, while you still can. Oh, we'll leave, but not empty-handed. The leader's eyes flicked to Asha and Garret's blood ran cold. Pretty little thing you got there, your daughter? She'll fetch a good price in the southern markets. Touch her and you die. Garret's voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of a man stating a simple fact. The leader laughed again. There's 9 of us and 1 of you. I like those odds. Then you're bad at math. Garret drew wormbane in one smooth motion. The blade sang as it left its sheath, its runes flaring to life with blue light. Last chance. Leave. The leader's grin faded. He gestured to his men. Kill him. Take the girl. They attacked. Garret moved. The first two bandits died before they'd taken 3 steps. Garret's blade was a blur, a horizontal slash that opened one man's throat, a reverse strike that took the second through the heart. They collapsed, blood spraying, and Garret was already moving to the next target. "Asha, run!" he shouted. But Asha didn't run. She couldn't. 3 of the bandits had circled around, cutting off her escape. They advanced on her, weapons drawn, cruel smiles on their faces. "Don't hurt her!" the leader shouted. "She's worthless dead!" The closest bandit, a stocky man with a club, reached for Asha. She slashed at him with her knife, but he was faster, catching her wrist and twisting. The knife fell from her hand. "Feisty," the bandit grunted. "I like—" A sword erupted from his chest. Garret had crossed 15 feet in a heartbeat, his blade punching through the bandit's back and out the front. He yanked the sword free and the man collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. But Garret was wounded. One of the other bandits had gotten a hit in, a shallow cut across his ribs, but enough to slow him down. Blood seeped through his tunic. "Father!" Asha's voice was high with fear. "I'm fine." Garret positioned himself between Asha and the remaining bandits. 5 left, including the leader. Manageable, if they came one at a time, but they didn't. They rushed him all at once. Garret fought like a demon. His blade wove a pattern of death, parrying, striking, blocking. But there were too many. A mace caught his shoulder, nearly breaking it. A sword grazed his thigh. He was being overwhelmed, and Asha could only watch in horror as her father, her invincible, unbreakable father, was being beaten down. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no!" One of the bandits broke away from the fight and lunged at Asha. She tried to dodge, but he was too fast. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back, his sword raised high. "This is for my brother," he snarled. Apparently, Garret had killed someone this man cared about in a previous encounter. "I'm going to gut you and make your father watch." The sword descended, and something inside Asha snapped. "No." The word wasn't spoken aloud. It was a thought, a feeling, a primal scream from the core of her being. Fire answered. Silver flames erupted from Asha's body. Not from her hands this time, but from everywhere. They exploded outward in a sphere of burning light that engulfed the bandit holding her. He didn't even have time to scream. The flames consumed him instantly, reducing him to ash in seconds. The sword he'd been holding clattered to the ground, its metal warped and melted. Asha stood in the center of a circle of scorched earth, her body wreathed in silver fire. Her eyes, usually brown from the cosmetic drops Garret made her use, had reverted to their true form. Vertical pupils, silver irises, dragon eyes, and they were filled with rage. The remaining bandits froze, staring at her in horror. "Demon!" one of them shouted. "She's a demon!" Asha didn't respond. She didn't even fully understand what was happening. She just knew that these men had hurt her father, had tried to hurt her, and she wouldn't let them. She raised her hands, and fire poured from her palms. Not wild, uncontrolled flames like before. These were focused, directed, streams of silver fire that lanced out and struck 2 more bandits, setting them ablaze. They ran, screaming, but the flames wouldn't go out. They burned until there was nothing left but ash. The leader and the remaining bandit looked at each other, then at Garret, still on his feet, bleeding but alive, then at Asha, wreathed in impossible flames. They ran. Garret let them go. He was too injured to give chase, and more importantly, he needed to get to Asha. "Asha!" He limped toward her, one hand pressed to the wound on his ribs. "Asha, look at me!" But Asha wasn't looking at him. She was staring at her hands, at the flames still dancing across her skin. Her breathing was rapid, panicked. I killed them, she whispered. I burned them alive. I could hear them screaming. I could smell. Her voice broke. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Garret reached her and placed his hands on her shoulders, ignoring the heat radiating from her body. Look at me. Asha, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, and Garret saw terror there. Pure, undiluted terror. I'm a monster, she said. No. Garret's voice was firm. You defended yourself. You defended me. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you a survivor. But the fire, the way they burned, I didn't mean to. I know. Garret pulled her close, and despite the flames still flickering around her, he held her tight. I know. But Asha, you need to calm down. The fire responds to your emotions. If you panic, it gets worse. I don't know how to stop it. Breathe, Ember said, materializing beside them. Her voice was gentle, soothing. Deep breaths, little flame, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Focus on the rhythm. Let the fire settle. Asha tried. Her breathing was still ragged, but she focused on it, counting each inhalation, each exhalation. Slowly, so slowly, the flames began to diminish. First, they retreated from her arms, then from her torso. Finally, they flickered out entirely, leaving Asha standing in the scorched circle, looking small and lost. I killed them, she said again, her voice hollow. You saved our lives, Garret corrected. Asha, those men would have killed me and taken you, sold you into slavery or worse. You did what you had to do. But Asha looked at the ashes scattered around them, all that remained of 3 human beings. Her stomach heaved, and she turned away, vomiting into the bushes. Garret held her hair back, his own pain forgotten. When she was done, he wiped her mouth with a cloth from his pack. The first time is always the hardest, he said quietly. Taking a life, it changes you. I won't lie about that. But Asha, you're not a monster. Monsters kill for pleasure. You killed to survive. There's a difference. Does it get easier? Asha's voice was small, childlike. No, Garret said honestly. It doesn't. And if it ever does, that's when you should worry. Asha nodded slowly, then looked up at her father. Really looked at him. You're hurt. I'll be fine. You're bleeding. I've had worse. Garret tried to stand and immediately swayed. The adrenaline was wearing off, and with it, the ability to ignore his injuries. Asha caught him, her small frame somehow supporting his weight. We need to get you home. Can you walk? With help. Garret draped an arm across her shoulders, and together they began the slow trek back to the cabin. Ember walked ahead, her senses extended, making sure no other threats lurked in the forest. Behind them, the scorched clearing and the ashes of dead men served as a grim reminder of what Asha was capable of. The walk home took twice as long as usual. Garret's injuries were worse than he'd let on. The cut on his ribs was deep, and he'd lost a lot of blood. By the time they reached the cabin, his face was pale, his breathing labored. Asha helped him inside and onto his bed. Then, with Ember's telepathic guidance, she began treating his wounds. She'd seen Garret do this before, countless times after hunts that had gone wrong. She knew the basics. Clean the wound. Apply pressure to stop bleeding. Stitch if necessary, bandage. Her hands shook as she worked, but she forced herself to focus. Her father needed her. She could fall apart later. You're good at this, Garret said, his voice strained. You taught me well. Apparently, he winced as she pulled a stitch tight. Asha, about what happened, about the fire. I know. Asha didn't look up from her work. You're going to tell me it's time, that I need to know the truth about who. About what I am. Garret was silent for a moment. Then, yes, I don't want to know. The words came out in a rush. I don't want to know what I am or why I can do these things, or why you've been so scared my whole life. I just want to be normal. I just want... Asha, she stopped, her hand stilling on the bandage. You deserve the truth, Garret said. You've always deserved it. I was just too much of a coward to tell you. Father, your mother wasn't human. Neither are you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Asha's hands fell away from the bandage. She stared at Garret, her mind struggling to process what he'd just said. Not human? No. Garret's eyes were heavy with guilt and sorrow. Asha, your mother was a dragon, the last of the silver dragons, and I... His voice broke. I killed her. The world seemed to tilt. Asha stepped back, shaking her head. No, that's not... You're lying. You have to be lying. I'm not. Garret tried to sit up, but pain forced him back down. 20 years ago, I was sent to kill the last dragon. I found her in the Silver Peaks. I fought her. I killed her. And when she died, she begged me to protect you, her daughter, the egg she'd been guarding. Egg? Asha's voice was barely a whisper. You were born from that egg. You're a dragon, Asha. The last dragon. I've been hiding it, hiding you, your entire life. Asha felt like she couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in. You killed my mother, my real mother. Yes. And you've been lying to me for 20 years. Yes. Everything you've ever told me about my mother, about who I am, it was all lies. Not everything. Garret's voice was desperate. I do love you. I have tried to protect you. That was never a lie. But you killed her! Asha's voice rose to a shout. Silver flames flickered to life along her arms. You murdered my mother. You're a monster. I know. Garret's voice was hollow. I know what I am, and I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything. I know it doesn't make it right. But Asha, please, don't. Asha held up a hand, the flames still dancing across her skin. Don't say anything else. I need to. She turned and ran, out of the cabin, into the forest, not caring where she was going, just needing to get away from Garret, away from the truth, away from everything. Garret tried to stand, to follow, but his injuries wouldn't let him. He collapsed back onto the bed, pain and despair warring in his chest. Let her go, Ember said softly, appearing on the foot of the bed. She needs time. What if she doesn't come back? Garret's voice was raw. Then you'll have to live with that, just like you've lived with everything else. Ember's tail swished sadly. You knew this day would come. I know. Garret closed his eyes. I've known for 20 years, but knowing it was coming doesn't make it hurt any less. Outside, in the darkening forest, Asha ran until her legs gave out. She collapsed beside a stream, her whole body shaking with sobs. A dragon. She was a dragon. And her father, the man who'd raised her, taught her, protected her, had killed her mother. The silver flames erupted from her body again, but this time she didn't try to stop them. She let them burn, let them consume the grass around her, let them express the rage and betrayal and grief she couldn't put into words. She screamed, and the sound was both human and something else, something primal and ancient, the sound of a dragon's rage. Asha didn't return to the cabin that night, or the next day, or the day after that. She wandered the forest, lost in grief and confusion and rage. The flames came and went, responding to her volatile emotions. She left a trail of scorched earth and smoldering trees in her wake. She didn't care. Nothing mattered anymore. Everything she'd thought she knew about herself, about her father, about her life, it was all a lie. On the third night, Ember found her. The firefox materialized on a rock beside the hollow tree where Asha had taken shelter. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, her burning tail providing light and warmth in the darkness. "He sent you," Asha said eventually. Her voice was hoarse from crying and screaming. "No one sends me anywhere. I go where I choose." Ember tilted her head. "But yes, he's worried. He's also too injured to come looking for you himself, which is probably the only thing keeping him in that cabin." "Good. I don't want to see him." "Understandable." Asha looked at the firefox. "Did you know about what I am?" "Yes. And you never told me." "It wasn't my truth to tell. Besides, would you have believed me?" Ember's tail swished. "Hello, Asha, you're secretly a dragon and your father killed your mother." That's not exactly a casual conversation. Despite everything, Asha almost laughed. It came out as something between a sob and a cough. "I suppose not. For what it's worth, he did love your mother, in his way, and he loves you. That's not a lie. How can you love someone and kill them? Humans are complicated. So are dragons. So is love." Ember settled into a more comfortable position. "Your father didn't know what your mother was. None of the dragon slayers did. They were told dragons were mindless beasts, threats to humanity. They believed it because it made the killing easier. That doesn't make it right." "No, it doesn't. But it makes it understandable. Garret thought he was saving the world. He was a weapon, aimed by people who knew the truth and hid it." Asha was quiet for a long time. Then, "What was she like? My mother?" "I never met her, but I've heard the stories. Zephyra the Wise, they called her. She was old, centuries old. She'd seen empires rise and fall. She'd tried to make peace between dragons and humans for generations." Ember's voice grew softer. "She failed. The humans feared dragon power too much, and in the end, they hunted her kind to extinction. Until me. Until you. So I'm the last." Asha looked at her hands. "The last dragon in the world, and my father made me an orphan. He also raised you, protected you, taught you to survive. If he hadn't taken you from that lair, you'd have died. No one else would have cared for a dragon hatchling. So I should be grateful?" Asha's voice rose. "Grateful that he murdered my mother and then felt guilty enough to raise me?" "I'm not saying you should be grateful. I'm saying it's complicated. Life usually is." Asha pulled her knees to her chest. "I don't know what to do. I can't go back there. I can't look at him without seeing, without thinking." "About what he did?" "Yes." "Then don't. Not yet." Ember stood and stretched. "Take the time you need. Process this. Figure out who you are without him." "But Asha..." The firefox fixed her with those amber eyes. "Don't stay away forever. He's not perfect. He's made terrible mistakes, but he's the only family you have. And despite everything, you love him." "I hate him," Asha said, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "You can hate him and love him at the same time. That's also complicated." Ember began to fade, returning to wherever fire spirits went when they weren't manifested. "One more thing," she said. "Those bandits who escaped, they're going to talk. They're going to tell people about the girl who burned their companions alive. People who hunt unusual things." Asha's blood ran cold. "You mean dragon hunters? They're going to come. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they're coming. And when they do, you'll need to decide, face them alone or face them with your father." Then Ember vanished completely, leaving Asha alone in the darkness. 5 days after the fight, Asha finally returned to the cabin. It was late morning. The sun was high, birds were singing, and the forest seemed almost peaceful. But Asha's heart was heavy as she approached the familiar structure. She'd made her decision. She still didn't forgive Garret. Wasn't sure she ever could. But Ember was right. She couldn't survive alone. Not yet. Not when there were people out there who would hunt her if they knew what she was. So she would return. But things would be different. She pushed open the door. The cabin was dim. The fire had gone out, and the windows were shuttered. For a moment, Asha panicked, thinking Garret had left, or worse. Then she saw him. He was sitting at the table, his head in his hands. The bandages on his ribs were stained with old blood. He hadn't changed them, probably hadn't moved much at all since she'd left. He looked up when she entered, and Asha was shocked by his appearance. He looked older, haggard, like he'd aged 10 years in 5 days. "Asha," his voice was rough, "you're back." "I'm back." She closed the door behind her. "But I'm not staying, not permanently." Something flickered in Garret's eyes, pain but also understanding. "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere I can figure out what I am, what I'm supposed to be." Asha crossed her arms. "But there are things we need to discuss first." "I know." Garret stood, wincing at the movement. "I owe you answers. Ask whatever you want." Asha had spent the last 5 days preparing questions. Now, facing him, they all came rushing out at once. "Did you know what she was when you fought her?" "No, I thought she was just a dragon, a monster." "When did you find out?" "When you hatched, when I saw you were human-shaped. That's when I realized what dragons really were." "And you didn't go back? Didn't stop?" Garret's jaw tightened. "I'd already killed them all. By the time I understood the truth, the damage was done." "So you kept me. Why?" "Because your mother asked me to. Because leaving you to die would have been the final sin. Because—" He paused. "Because the moment I held you, I knew I couldn't let anything happen to you." Asha felt tears burning in her eyes, but she forced them back. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to be the hero of this story. You're a murderer." "I know. You killed my entire species." "I know," Garret's voice cracked. "I know what I did. I've lived with it every day for 20 years. Every time I look at you, I see her, your mother, dying, begging me to protect you. And I've tried. God's help me, I've tried. But nothing I do will ever make up for what I took from you." "Then why did you train me?" Asha demanded. "Why teach me to fight, to survive? Was it guilt? Penance?" "It was necessity." Garret moved closer, and Asha resisted the urge to step back. "Asha, there are people in this world who hunt dragons, who would kill you if they knew what you were. I've been training you to defend yourself because I knew, I've always known, that someday you'd be discovered. And when that day came, you'd need to be ready. Those bandits, the ones who escaped, will talk, yes." Garret's expression was grim. "Word will spread. A girl who can summon silver flames. It won't take long for the Order to connect the dots." "The Order?" "The Order of the Iron Cross. The organization I used to work for. They're the ones who orchestrated the Dragon Purge. And if they find out you exist—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Asha felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "So, I'll never be safe. Not as long as you live among humans, not without hiding what you are. I'm tired of hiding." The flames erupted from Asha's hands, and she didn't bother to suppress them. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of being afraid." "Then what do you want to do?" Garret asked. "Tell me, I'll help, whatever you need." Asha looked at the flames dancing across her skin, silver and beautiful and terrible. "I want to know what I am," she said. "Really know. Not just the human part, the dragon part. I want to understand my mother's people, their history, their culture, everything that was stolen from them." "There's nothing left," Garret said quietly. "No books, no records. The Order destroyed it all. The only thing that remains are ruins, empty cities where dragons once lived." "Then take me there." Asha extinguished the flames and looked Garret in the eye. "Take me to one of these cities. Show me what you destroyed. Let me see what my mother's world looked like." Garret was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "There's a place, Eternus, the last great dragon city. It's 3 weeks' travel from here, through the Wildlands. It's dangerous. I don't care. And we'll be exposed. No cabin to hide in. No familiar territory." "I said I don't care." Asha's voice was firm. "I need this. I need to understand." Garret studied her, and Asha saw something in his eyes. Pride, sadness, maybe both. "All right," he said. "We'll go to Eternus. But Asha—" He hesitated. "I can't undo what I did. I can't bring them back. All I can do is show you what they were, and hope that somehow it's enough." "It won't be," Asha said honestly, "but it's a start." She turned to leave, to pack supplies, but Garret's voice stopped her. "Asha, I am sorry for everything." She didn't turn around. "I know. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" The question hung in the air. Asha wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell him that of course she'd forgive him, that they'd move past this, that they'd be okay. But she couldn't lie. Not about this. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Maybe. Someday. But not today. That's fair." Asha left the room, leaving Garret alone with his guilt and his grief. Ember materialized beside him, her tail swishing. "Well, that went about as well as could be expected. She hates me. She's hurt. There's a difference." Ember hopped onto the table. "Give her time. She's strong. Like her mother, she'll figure out who she is. And maybe, when she does, she'll realize that you gave her a gift. The chance to be more than just the last of a dead species. The chance to be herself. Or she'll realize I'm a monster and leave forever." "That's possible too," Ember admitted. "But I don't think she will. She came back, didn't she? Even after everything. That has to count for something." Garret looked out the window at Asha moving around the cabin, preparing for their journey. "I hope you're right," he said, "because if Ember was wrong, if Asha decided she couldn't live with the truth, Garret would lose the only thing in his life worth protecting. And this time, there would be no coming back from it." 300 miles to the south, in the fortress monastery of Ironspire, a meeting was taking place. The Hall of Blades was a circular chamber carved from black stone, its walls lined with weapons taken from dead dragons, massive claws mounted like trophies, scales polished to mirror brightness, and at the center, suspended by chains, a dragon skull the size of a wagon. 50 men and women sat in concentric circles around the skull. They wore armor of dark steel, each breastplate bearing the symbol of their order, a silver cross pierced by a sword. The Order of the Iron Cross, dragon slayers, dragon hunters, the holy warriors who had cleansed the world of the winged menace. Or so they thought. At the center of the circle stood a young man, 25 years old, with sharp features and eyes that burned with fanatical intensity. His name was Caldris Vane, and he was the youngest master ever inducted into the order. He was also a true believer. "Brothers, sisters." Caldris's voice carried through the hall without echo. Perfect acoustics, designed for speeches just like this. "I come before you with grave news. The mission our predecessors began 20 years ago, the complete eradication of dragonkind, is incomplete." Murmurs rippled through the assembled hunters. "Impossible," one of the older members said. "Garret Steelheart killed the last dragon. We all know this, The great silver in the peaks, it's documented. Documented, yes, but incomplete. Caldress gestured, and an aide brought forward 2 men. They were rough-looking, bandaged with the hollow eyes of men who'd seen something that broke them. The survivors from the forest. "Tell them," Caldress commanded. "Tell them what you saw." The first bandit, the one who'd been the leader, spoke in a shaking voice. "We ambushed a man and a girl in the forest. The man was Steelheart. We recognized him, thought we'd take the girl, sell her. But when we tried," he swallowed hard. "The girl. She burned. Silver flames, like nothing I've ever seen. She killed 3 of my men, turned them to ash in seconds." "Silver flames," Caldress repeated, turning back to the order. "The signature of the silver dragon lineage, the bloodline we thought was extinct. A mage, perhaps," another member suggested. "Someone who studied dragon magic." "No." Caldress's voice was firm. The men described vertical pupils, silver eyes, and most tellingly, Steelheart was protecting her, raising her, the great dragon slayer, hiding a dragon child. Why would he do that unless she was the last, an elderly woman finished. Her name was Master Aline, the oldest member of the order. "You're saying Steelheart found a survivor, a hatchling perhaps, and instead of killing it, he raised it." "Exactly." The hall erupted in conversation. Some members looked intrigued, others skeptical. A few looked horrified. Master Elaine raised her hand and silence fell. "This is a serious accusation, Caldress. You're claiming that our greatest hero has betrayed us, that he's been harboring a dragon for years. Do you have proof beyond the word of 2 bandits?" "I have this." Caldress produced a scroll and unrolled it. A report from a village called Thornhaven. 10 years ago, Steelheart came through with an infant. Claimed he'd found her in a destroyed village, but there were no destroyed villages in that region at that time. I checked. "He could have been lying about the location," someone said. "He could have been lying about everything," Caldress countered. "And consider this, Steelheart has lived in isolation for 20 years. He's avoided all contact with the Order. He's refused every summons, every request for information. Don't you find that suspicious?" "Garret has always been solitary," Master Aline said, "even before the purge ended. That's simply his nature. Or he's hiding something." Caldress rolled up the scroll. "I propose we investigate. Send a squad to Steelheart's last known location. Confirm whether this girl exists, and if she does, determine what she is." "And if she's a dragon?" someone asked. Caldress's eyes hardened. "Then we complete the mission. We eliminate the last dragon, and we do what should have been done 20 years ago. Even if it means going through Steelheart?" Master Aline's voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. "You're talking about killing a brother of the Order, a hero. I'm talking about fulfilling our sacred duty." Caldress placed his hand over his heart, over the symbol of the cross. "Dragons are an existential threat to humanity. That was true 20 years ago. It's true today. If one survives, it could breed. It could bring back the species. Everything our predecessors died for would be for nothing." The hall was silent. Master Elaine studied Caldress for a long moment. Then she stood. "Very well. You may take a squad. 20 warriors. Track Steelheart. Find this girl. Determine the truth." She paused. "But Caldress, if she is human, if this is all a misunderstanding, you will leave them in peace. The Order does not kill humans. We are not monsters." "Of course, Master." Caldress bowed, but there was something in his eyes, a fervor, a certainty, that suggested he'd already made up his mind about what he'd find, and what he'd do about it. The meeting adjourned, and Caldress returned to his quarters. a sparse room with a bed, a desk, and walls covered in maps and documents, all related to dragons, their history, their biology, their weaknesses. Caldress had dedicated his entire life to studying them, to understanding them, not out of respect or curiosity, but out of hatred. Because 15 years ago, a dragon had killed his family. He'd been 10 years old. His village had been prosperous, peaceful. Then a wounded dragon, one of the last, fleeing from the purge, had crashed into the valley. Delirious with pain and rage, it had burned everything. Caldress had survived by hiding in a well. He'd listened to the screams, smelled the burning flesh, and when he'd finally climbed out, there was nothing left. No homes, no people, no family. The Order had found him 3 days later, nearly dead from exposure and starvation. They'd taken him in, trained him, given him purpose, and he'd sworn an oath. No dragon would ever harm another human, not while he drew breath. Now, standing in his quarters, Caldress looked at a map of the Northern Territories. Somewhere up there was Steelheart's cabin, and somewhere near it was a girl with silver flames, the last dragon. "I'll find you," Caldress said quietly, "and I'll finish what was started, for my family, for humanity, for the mission." He began preparing, selecting his best warriors, gathering weapons specifically designed to kill dragons, blessed steel, enchanted crossbows, alchemical fire that could burn even magical scales. Within 3 days, he was ready. Within a week, he was on the road north, and within 2 weeks, he would reach the cabin in the woods. But by then, Garret and Asha would be gone. The Wildlands lived up to their name. It was a vast expanse of untamed wilderness stretching between the civilized south and the frozen north. Dense forests gave way to rocky foothills, which in turn became jagged mountain ranges that scraped the sky. It was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Garret and Asha had been traveling for 8 days. 8 days of walking from dawn until dusk. 8 days of rationing supplies and sleeping under the stars. 8 days of tense, uncomfortable silence. They'd barely spoken since leaving the cabin. Garret didn't know what to say. Every time he looked at Asha, he saw the hurt in her eyes, the betrayal, and every time he tried to find words that might bridge the gap between them, they died in his throat. What could he say that would make any of this better? Ember, as usual, had opinions. "This is painful to watch," the firefox said, trotting alongside them. "You two have the emotional communication skills of particularly stubborn rocks." "Not now, Ember," Garret thought back. "Yes now, you're both miserable. She's hurting and angry and you're drowning in guilt, and neither of you will actually talk about it. It's exhausting." "What do you want me to say?" "Sorry I murdered your entire species." "Want to talk about feelings?" "It's a start." Ember's tail flicked in agitation. "Look, I've lived for 3 centuries. I've seen a lot of families, and you know what destroys them? Not the big betrayals. The silence after. The refusal to be vulnerable. I am vulnerable. I've told her everything. You've told her facts. You haven't told her how you feel." Garret didn't respond, mostly because Ember was right, and he hated it. Ahead of him, Asha walked with her arms crossed, her hood up despite the warm afternoon. She'd been practicing her fire magic during breaks. Ember had been teaching her basic control, but Asha hadn't shared any of that with Garret, hadn't asked for his input or approval. She was pulling away, building walls, and Garret didn't know how to stop it. They made camp that evening in a small clearing beside a stream. Garret started a fire, a normal fire, not magical, while Asha went to refill their water skins. When she returned, Garret had prepared a simple meal: dried meat, hard bread, and some edible roots he'd found. Asha took her portion without a word and sat on the opposite side of the fire. The silence stretched. Finally, Ember, sitting between them like a furry mediator, spoke aloud. Her voice, when she chose to make it audible rather than telepathic, was surprisingly pleasant, like wind chimes. "So," she said, "this is fun. Two people who care about each other sitting in painful silence? My favorite." Asha shot her a look. "We're fine." "You're absolutely not fine. You're both drowning in your own misery and stubbornness. It's tragic." Ember groomed her paw. "Someone needs to talk, so I'll start. Asha, how are you feeling?" And fine is not an acceptable answer. "I'm not having this conversation." "Too bad. We're having it. You're hurt, angry, betrayed. Those are all valid feelings, but you're also confused because despite everything, you still love your father, and that makes you feel guilty, which makes you angrier." Asha's hands clenched. "You don't know what I'm feeling. I'm a 300-year-old fire spirit. I know exactly what you're feeling. Emotions burn, little flame, and yours are burning very bright right now." Ember turned to Garret. "Your turn. How are you feeling?" "Leave me out of this," Garret said. "Absolutely not. You're feeling guilty, obviously, but also terrified. Terrified that Asha will leave, that she'll never forgive you, that you'll lose the only thing in your life that matters, and rather than admit any of that, you're bottling it up and hoping it goes away. I said leave me out of this, and I said no." Ember's tail burned brighter. "You two are going to talk, really talk, or I swear by the flames of creation I will set both of you on fire until you do." "You wouldn't," Asha said. "Try me." There was a long pause. Then, surprisingly, Garret spoke. "I'm scared." His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "I'm scared that I've destroyed the only family I have left, that nothing I do will ever be enough to make up for what I did, that you'll realize you're better off without me, and you'll leave, and I'll deserve it." Asha looked up, surprised. In all her years, she'd never heard her father admit fear. He was the unshakable one, the strong one. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Asha said after a moment. "I want to. Part of me wants to just move past this, pretend it never happened. But I can't. Every time I look at you, I think about her, my mother, and what you took from her, from me." "I know. But," Asha's voice cracked, "but you're also the only parent I've ever known. You raised me, taught me, kept me safe, and I don't want to hate you, but I don't know how not to." "Then hate me," Garret said. "I can live with that, as long as you're alive to hate me." "That's not," Asha made a frustrated sound. "That's not how this works. You don't just accept being hated." "What else can I do?" Garret looked at her across the fire, and Asha saw the full weight of his guilt in his eyes. "I can't bring them back. I can't undo what I did. All I can do is try to protect you from the consequences of my sins. And if that means you hate me forever, then so be it." "I don't want to hate you," Asha's voice rose. "I want things to go back to how they were. I want to not know any of this. I want—" She stopped, her voice breaking into a sob. Garret stood, moved around the fire, and, hesitantly, as if expecting to be rejected, sat beside her. "I can't give you that," he said quietly. "I can't make this easier. But Asha, I need you to know something. When I took you from that lair, when I first held you, I just realized what I'd done, what I'd been doing for 27 years. I wanted to die. I thought I should die. Why didn't you?" The question wasn't accusatory, just curious. "Because of you. Because you looked at me with those silver eyes, and you trusted me. You grabbed my finger, and you held on like I was the only solid thing in the world. And I thought, Maybe I don't deserve to live, but you deserve a chance. So I'll give you that chance, even if it means carrying this guilt forever." Asha was quiet for a long time. Then, "That's a lot of pressure to put on a baby." Despite himself, Garret huffed, not quite a laugh, but close. "You were a very demanding baby." "Was I?" "You cried whenever I put you down. I had to carry you everywhere for the first 3 months. I barely slept." Asha looked at him, and for the first time in days, there was something other than anger in her eyes, something softer. "You never told me that." "There's a lot I never told you. Mostly because I was trying to protect you, but also because I didn't know how to talk about it, about her, about what happened." "Tell me now," Asha said. "Tell me about that day. I want to know everything." And so Garret did. He told her about the climb to the Silver Peaks, about finding the lair, about Zephyra, magnificent and terrible and wise, about the battle, brutal and desperate, about the moment he drove Wyrmbane through the dragon's skull and the light going out of her eyes, about her final words, "Protect her," about finding the egg and watching it crack open and realizing what he'd done. He told her everything, every detail, no matter how painful, and Asha listened, her eyes fixed on the fire, tears streaming silently down her face. When he finished, the silence that fell was different, not angry, just heavy with grief. "She tried to save me," Asha said finally. "Even dying, she tried to save me. She loved you, that much was clear. And you honored that. You kept her last wish." "I tried." Asha turned to look at him. "Why? After everything, after realizing what you'd done, you could have left me there, left me to die. It would have been easier." "Nothing about this has been easy," Garret said. "But leaving you would have been the one thing I couldn't come back from. I'd killed your mother. I couldn't kill you too, even if it was just by abandonment." Asha nodded slowly. Then, surprising both of them, she leaned against Garret's shoulder. He froze, not sure what to do. Then carefully he put his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire burn down to embers. "I'm still angry," Asha said eventually. "I'm still hurt, and I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you." "I understand. But you're my father. Not my birth father, but the only father I've ever known. And despite everything, I don't want to lose you." Garret's arm tightened around her shoulders. "You won't, I promise. Whatever happens, whatever comes, I'll be here. Until the hunters find us. Especially then." Ember, who'd been watching the entire exchange with uncharacteristic silence, finally spoke. "Well, that was exhausting, but productive. Gold star for emotional vulnerability." Asha actually laughed, a small, wet sound, but a laugh nonetheless. "Shut up, Ember. Never. Someone has to provide comic relief in this tragedy." They settled in for the night, and for the first time since the truth had come out, Asha slept close to Garret, not curled against him like she had as a child, but close enough that he could hear her breathing, could reach her if danger came. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, a fragile bridge across a chasm of pain, and for now that would have to be enough. They reached the outskirts of the Wildlands' most dangerous region, the Shattered Canyons, 2 days later. The canyons were a maze of rocky passages and dead ends, carved by ancient rivers that had long since dried up. It was the fastest route to Eternus, but also the most treacherous, and it was where Caldrus and his hunters caught up to them. Garret felt them before he saw them, a prickling at the back of his neck, the instinct born of decades hunting and being hunted. He raised his hand, signaling Asha to stop. "What is it?" she whispered. "We're being followed." Garrett's hand went to Wormbane. Multiple people, trained, staying downwind. The order, Ember said, materializing on a rock. 20 of them. They've been tracking us for 3 days. I was hoping they'd give up. They didn't. Why didn't you tell us? Asha hissed. Because you two were finally talking to each other. I didn't want to interrupt. Priorities, Ember. I have them. Emotional health first, mortal danger second. Garret ignored their bickering, his eyes scanning the canyon walls. The hunters were good. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were there. They'll try to trap us, he said. Funnel us into a kill zone. Asha, can you climb? Yes, but good. We go up. Stay on the high ground. Harder to surround us there. They began climbing, using handholds in the rock face. Asha was surprisingly good at it. Dragon reflexes and strength, even in human form. Garret followed, his body protesting every movement. He wasn't as young as he used to be. They'd nearly reached a ledge when a voice called out from below. Garret Steelheart, stand down by order of the Iron Cross. Garret looked down and saw them. 20 hunters in dark armor, crossbows aimed upward, and at their head a young man with fanatical eyes. Caldress. I have no quarrel with the order, Garret called back. Let us pass. We're here for the girl, Caldress said. The dragon child you've been hiding. Surrender her, and you may leave unharmed. Never. Then you die with her. Caldress raised his hand. Loose. 20 crossbow bolts flew toward them. Garret grabbed Asha and threw them both flat against the rock face. The bolts clattered around them, one missing Garret's head by inches. Move, now! He shoved Asha upward. She scrambled over the ledge just as the hunters began climbing after them. They ran, jumping from ledge to ledge, using the terrain to their advantage. But the hunters were relentless, professional. They knew how to track prey through difficult terrain. Garret and Asha were being herded, pushed toward something. They burst out of a narrow passage and found themselves in a dead-end canyon. Sheer walls on 3 sides, no way out. A trap. The hunters filed in behind them, forming a semicircle cutting off escape. Caldress walked forward, a blessed sword in his hand. End of the line, Steelheart. Surrender the dragon. Last chance. Garret drew Wormbane and positioned himself between Caldress and Asha. You'll have to go through me. So be it. Caldress raised his sword. Brothers, sisters, for humanity, for the mission. For the mission, the hunters roared, and they charged. The battle lasted exactly 47 seconds. Garret fought like a man possessed. Wormbane sang through the air, its blessed steel cutting through armor and flesh with equal ease. He moved between the hunters like water, never staying in one place, never giving them a clear target. But there were 20 of them, and only one of him. A mace caught him in the ribs. A sword opened a gash across his shoulder. A crossbow bolt grazed his thigh. He was being worn down, piece by piece. Asha stood frozen behind him, her hands beginning to glow with silver light. The fire wanted to come. She could feel it building inside her, responding to her fear and rage. But she was terrified of losing control again, of burning everyone, including Garret. Asha, Ember's voice cut through her panic. Listen to me. The fire isn't your enemy. It's part of you. Stop fighting it and use it. I can't. I'll hurt Father. Your father is about to die. You want to help him? Then burn them. A hunter broke through Garret's defense and lunged at Asha, sword raised high. Time seemed to slow. Asha saw the blade descending, saw the hatred in the hunter's eyes, saw Garret turning too far away to help. The fire erupted, not wild this time, not uncontrolled. Asha thrust her hands forward, and twin streams of silver flame poured from her palms like dragon's breath. They struck the charging hunter square in the chest, and he went down screaming, his armor melting, his flesh charring. The other hunters stumbled back, fear replacing their zealotry. "Demon!" one of them shouted. "She's a demon! She's a dragon!" Caldress roared. "That's what we came here to kill! Attack!" But the hunters hesitated. The difference between fighting a girl and fighting a creature that could incinerate you with a thought was considerable. Asha used their hesitation. She swept her arms wide, and a wall of silver flames erupted between them and the hunters, forcing them back. "Father, come on!" Garret didn't need to be told twice. He ran to Asha, and together they bolted back through the canyon passage they'd come from. The firewall wouldn't last long. Already, Asha could feel it draining her. Whatever power she had, it wasn't infinite. They ran. Behind them, Caldress's voice echoed, "After them! Don't let them escape!" The chase continued through the shattered canyons, up narrow passages, across precarious bridges of stone, through caves that smelled of ancient earth and bat droppings. The hunters were always behind them, always gaining. Asha was exhausted. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, and the magic had drained something vital from her core. She stumbled, nearly fell. Garret caught her, threw her over his shoulder despite his own injuries, and kept running. "Put me down!" Asha gasped. "You're hurt!" "I've had worse." "Father, not now." Garret's voice was strained but determined. He wouldn't slow down, wouldn't stop, not while there was breath in his body. Ember ran ahead, her burning tail leaving a trail of light. "There! The cave system! We can lose them in there!" They plunged into a massive cave entrance, the darkness swallowing them whole. Garret finally set Asha down, and they ran together, hands on the walls to guide them, Ember's fire providing the only light. Behind them, the hunters' torches appeared like angry fireflies. "Split up here," Caldress's voice echoed. "Flush them out. They can't have gone far." The cave system was a labyrinth. Garret and Asha took turn after turn, going deeper, always deeper, until the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. Finally, when Asha felt like her heart would burst, Garret stopped. They were in a small cavern with a pool of crystal-clear water and formations of stone that glittered in Ember's light. "Rest," Garret said, collapsing against the wall. 5 minutes, then we move again." Asha slid down beside him, gasping for air. Are they gone?" "For now, but they'll keep looking. Caldress doesn't strike me as someone who gives up easily." "Fanatical lunatic with a messiah complex." Ember agreed, curling up near the pool. "The most dangerous kind of enemy. He genuinely believes he's doing the right thing." "How do we stop him?" Asha asked. "We don't," Garret said grimly. "We survive him. There's a difference." They sat in silence for a moment, both too exhausted for more words. Then Garret noticed Asha staring at her hands. "You controlled it," he said. "The fire. You didn't lose yourself this time." "Barely." Asha flexed her fingers, watching them tremble. "I was terrified the whole time. One wrong thought and I could have burned you too." "But you didn't. That's what matters." "How do you do it?" Asha looked at him. "How do you fight without being afraid?" "Who said I wasn't afraid?" Garret managed a small smile. "I'm always afraid. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. The trick is not letting it control you. That's easier said than done. Everything worth doing is." Ember's ears suddenly perked up. "We need to move. Now." "What?" "The cave. It's not a cave, it's a passage, and it leads somewhere very interesting. Come on." They followed Ember deeper into the cave system. The passages grew wider, the stone smoother, more deliberately carved. Someone, something, had shaped these tunnels. And then they emerged into a vast cavern that stole Asha's breath. It was a city, an entire city, carved into the living rock. Buildings rose from the cavern floor like stone flowers, their architecture impossibly elegant, all sweeping curves and delicate arches. Towers reached toward the cavern ceiling hundreds of feet above. Bridges connected structures at dizzying heights, and everywhere there were carvings. Dragons, hundreds of them carved into every surface, frozen in stone mid-flight, their wings spread, their mouths open in silent roars. "Eternus," Garret whispered, "the last great dragon city." Asha moved forward as if in a trance. This was it, the place her mother had come from, the world that had been destroyed. The city was empty, had been empty for decades, but it didn't feel dead. It felt like it was sleeping, waiting. "They lived here?" Asha's voice was small. "Dragons? In their human forms, yes." Garret walked beside her, looking at the carvings with new eyes. When he'd first seen these ruins 20 years ago, they'd been just that. Ruins, evidence of a defeated enemy. Now, they were a memorial, a graveyard. This was their greatest city, a place where magic and art and knowledge flourished. The Order burned it, killed everyone who lived here. He stopped. "I was there. I helped." Asha looked at him, and for once there was no anger in her eyes, just sadness. Show me everything." They explored the city for hours. Garret showed her the grand library, where thousands of books had once been kept. The shelves were empty now. The Order had burned the contents. But some stone tablets remained, covered in the flowing script of Draconic. He showed her the Hall of Scales, where dragons had shed their old scales and left them as offerings. The scales were still there, piled like treasure, each one a different color: ruby red, sapphire blue, emerald green, and silver. So much silver. He showed her the rookery, where dragon children had learned to fly. It was an open area near the top of the cavern, with platforms at varying heights and nets strung below to catch those who fell. "They taught their young here," Garret said, "not just to fly, but to be part of a community. Dragons weren't solitary. That was another lie. They lived together, raised their children together. They had families." Asha ran her hand along a carved railing. She could almost imagine it. Dragon children, laughing as they leapt from platform to platform, their parents watching proudly. It should have been beautiful, but all she felt was loss. "They took everything from you," she said, "not just lives, but culture, history, knowledge, an entire way of life." "Yes, and you helped them." "Yes." Asha turned to face him. "Do you understand what you destroyed? Do you really understand?" Garret looked around the empty city, at the beautiful architecture that would never be used again, at the carvings of dragons that would never fly, at the remnants of a civilization erased from the world. "I'm beginning to," he said quietly, "and it's worse than I could have imagined." They continued exploring and eventually came to what must have been the heart of the city, a massive circular plaza with a raised platform in the center. The platform was carved with intricate runes and symbols. "The speaking stone," Ember said, materializing beside them. "This is where dragons gathered to share knowledge, to make decisions, to celebrate." Asha climbed onto the platform and stood in the center. For a moment, she just stood there, eyes closed, trying to feel some connection to this place, to her heritage. Then she heard it, a whisper, faint, like wind through distant trees. "Daughter of Zephyra, last of the silver line, welcome home." Asha's eyes snapped open. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Garret asked. "The echoes," Ember said softly. "This place is soaked in old magic, dragon magic. It remembers, and it recognizes you. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. Asha realized they weren't uncommon or even draconic. They were pure meaning, bypassing language entirely, speaking directly to her soul. We are the past. You are the future. Do not forget us. Do not let them erase us. Remember. Tears streamed down Asha's face. I hear them. The dragons who lived here. They're still here. Their memories. Their essence. She turned in a slow circle, and as she did, something impossible happened. The carvings on the walls began to glow. Soft silver light emanated from every stone dragon, growing brighter and brighter until the entire city was illuminated. And then they moved. The stone dragons peeled away from the walls, becoming translucent, ethereal. They flew through the air, circling the plaza, their wings silent but majestic. There were dozens of them, hundreds. All the dragons who had died here, their spirits preserved by the ancient magic of this place. They circled Asha, and she realized they were singing, a wordless melody that made her heart ache with longing for something she'd never known. Daughter, sister, hope, remember us, carry us forward. You are not alone. One of the spirits, larger than the others, with scales that shimmered like moonlight, descended to hover before Asha. She knew, without being told, who this was. Zephyra, her mother. The spirit dragon regarded Asha with eyes full of love and sadness. Then she leaned forward and touched her forehead to Asha's. Light exploded through Asha's mind, not painful, overwhelming. She saw her mother's memories, her life, centuries of existence, compressed into moments. She saw Zephyra as a hatchling, learning to fly in this very city. Saw her grow, learn, become wise. Saw her fall in love with another dragon, Asha's father, who had died in the early days of the Purge. Saw Zephyra flee to the mountains, pregnant, desperate to protect her unborn child. Saw her waiting in that lair, knowing the hunters would come, knowing she would die, but hoping, praying that her child would survive. Saw her final moments. Garret, young and fierce, driving his blade through her skull. The pain, the regret, and beneath it all, a desperate plea to the universe. Please, let someone save my daughter. And the universe had answered, in the most unlikely way possible. The vision ended, and Asha gasped, stumbling back. Garret caught her, holding her steady. What did you see? He asked. Everything, Asha whispered. She didn't hate you, even at the end. She was just sad that it had come to this, that humans and dragons couldn't find peace. Garret's face crumpled. Asha, she forgave you. Asha looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. In her last moments, she forgave you, because you were just doing what you thought was right, and because, she paused, because she saw something in you, something good. That's why she asked you to protect me. She knew you would. Garret couldn't speak. He just held Asha as she cried, and for the first time in 20 years, he let himself cry too. Around them, the spirit dragons continued their silent flight, bearing witness to this moment of grief and healing. Finally, the spirits began to fade, returning to the walls, to the stones, to whatever realm they'd come from. Zephyra was the last to go. She looked at Garret one final time, and he felt something pass between them. Not words, just understanding, acceptance. Then she was gone, and the city fell dark again. But something had changed. Asha pulled back from Garret and wiped her eyes. We need to keep moving. The hunters will find us eventually. I know, but Asha... Garret hesitated. What you saw, what you heard, the dragon's memories. Can you carry that? Can you remember them? I have to. Asha looked around the empty city. I'm the last. If I don't remember, if I don't carry their stories, then they really are gone, erased, and I won't let that happen." She placed her hand on the speaking stone, and silver light pulsed beneath her palm. The magic of this place recognized her, accepted her. "You are the keeper of memories now," the whispers said. "The last daughter of dragons. Carry us forward. Let the world know we existed, that we loved, that we mattered." "I will," Asha promised. "I swear it." The light faded and the speaking stone went dormant. Ember hopped onto the platform beside her. "So, heavy responsibility, ancient legacy, the weight of an entire extinct species on your shoulders. How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Asha admitted. "Good answer. Fear means you understand the stakes." Ember's tail swished. "But you're not alone. You have your father, you have me, and you have the strength of every dragon who ever lived flowing through your veins. That's a lot of pressure. Welcome to being special. I told you it came with a price." Despite everything, Asha smiled. Just a little. Then she turned to Garret. "We should go, find another way out of the city. The hunters." A sound echoed through the cavern. Footsteps, many footsteps, and torchlight growing brighter. "Too late," Garret said, drawing wormbane. "They found us." Caldrus's voice boomed through the city. "Steelheart, there's nowhere left to run. Surrender the dragon, and this ends peacefully." "That's not going to happen," Garret shouted back. "Then you leave me no choice." There was a pause. Then, "Brothers, sisters, burn it all. If we can't have the dragon, let her die in the ashes of her ancestors." The hunters began throwing torches. Not at Garret and Asha directly, at the city itself, at the ancient wooden beams that supported some structures, at the old tapestries and furnishings that had somehow survived the centuries. Eternus began to burn. "No!" Asha screamed. "No! This is all that's left. You can't—" But they could. And they were. The flames spread quickly, consuming irreplaceable history, reducing beauty to ash. Garret grabbed Asha's arm. "We have to go, now." "But the city is already lost. We can't save it, but we can survive. Come on." They ran, Ember leading the way, as Eternus, the last great dragon city, burned around them. Behind them, Caldrus stood in the plaza, watching the flames with satisfaction. "Let it burn," he said to his hunters. "Let it all burn. Erase them from history, from memory. Dragons have no place in this world." But he was wrong, because Asha carried them now, in her memories, in her blood, in her very soul. And as long as she lived, dragons would never truly be extinct. They burst from the cave system into daylight, gasping and covered in soot. Behind them, smoke poured from the entrance as Eternus burned in its underground tomb. Asha collapsed to her knees, staring back at the smoke. They destroyed it. They destroyed everything. "We're alive," Garret said, pulling her to her feet. "That's what matters. We can mourn later. Right now we run." They were in a narrow valley, rocky and exposed. Ember's ears were flat against her head. "They're coming. 20 seconds, maybe less. We need height. High ground is our only advantage." "There," Garret pointed to a stone bridge that spanned the valley, connecting two cliff faces. "If we can reach that bridge, we can defend the choke point. They can't surround us there." They ran. Their bodies screamed in protest, exhausted, injured, pushed beyond normal human limits. But fear was an excellent motivator. They reached the bridge just as the hunters poured from the cave entrance. Caldrus saw them immediately. "There! Cut them off! Don't let them cross!" Too late. Garret and Asha were already on the bridge. It was ancient, older even than Eternus, carved by some civilization that predated dragons. The stone was worn smooth and there were no railings. Just a 30-foot wide path suspended 200 feet above a rocky gorge. Garret positioned himself at the center of the bridge. Wormbane ready. Asha, stay behind me. If things go badly, if I fall, you run. You fly if you have to. I can't fly, I don't know how. Then you'll figure it out quickly. The hunters reached the bridge. Caldris walked at their head, his blessed sword gleaming. Last chance, Steelheart. Step aside. Let us complete our mission. My mission is to protect her. That trumps yours. Then you die a traitor. Caldris raised his sword. Charge! The hunters rushed forward. Garret met them at the choke point. On the narrow bridge, their numbers meant nothing. Only 2 or 3 could fight him at once. And Garret, for all his years and injuries, was still one of the greatest warriors alive. He fought with controlled brutality. Every movement economical, efficient, deadly. Wormbane wove a pattern of death that the hunters couldn't penetrate, but there were 20 of them, and only one of him. They pressed forward, relentless. Garret gave ground, step by step, pushed back by sheer weight of numbers. Behind him, Asha watched in horror. Her hands began to glow with silver fire, but she was terrified of using it. One wrong move, and she could hit Garret. Ember, she hissed, what do I do? What you were born to do, Ember said. Stop fighting your nature. Accept it. Embrace it. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Deep down, you know exactly what you are. You've always known. You just haven't accepted it. Asha looked at the fire in her hands, then at Garret, bleeding and desperate, being pushed toward the edge of the bridge, then at the hunters, with their blessed weapons and their hatred and their absolute conviction that killing her was righteous, and something inside her clicked into place. She'd spent her whole life trying to be human, trying to fit in, trying to be normal, but she wasn't human. She was a dragon, and it was time to stop apologizing for it. Asha closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past the fear, past the doubt, past the human shell she wore like armor. She reached for the truth of what she was, and she found it. Fire exploded from her body, not just from her hands this time, but from everywhere. Silver flames wreathed her like a second skin. Her eyes blazed with inner light, and her body began to change. Bones shifted, muscles expanded, skin hardened into scales that gleamed like polished mirrors. Garret spun around, his sword raised defensively, then froze. Where Asha had stood, there was now a dragon. She was magnificent, 30 feet from nose to tail, with wings that stretched 50 feet when fully extended. Her scales were pure silver, each one catching the light like a prism. Her eyes were molten silver, intelligent and ancient. Her claws dug into the stone bridge, cracking it with their weight. And when she opened her mouth, revealing rows of teeth like swords, a sound emerged that shook the valley. A dragon's roar. The hunters scattered backward in terror. Several fell to their knees, their weapons clattering to the stone. Caldris stood his ground, but even he looked pale. Impossible. Dragons can't. She's too young to transform. I am Asha. The voice came from the dragon's mind, audible to everyone on the bridge. It was her voice, but layered with power and resonance that made it undeniable. Daughter of Zephyra, last of the silver dragons, and you have murdered my people. She reared back, her chest expanding, and every hunter who'd ever studied dragon lore knew what was coming. Dragon fire. Garret dove aside just as Asha unleashed a torrent of silver flames. They washed over the hunters like a tidal wave, and men screamed as their armor melted and their flesh charred. But Asha had control now. She didn't kill them, just burned their weapons, destroyed their armor, left them writhing in pain but alive. All except Caldris. He'd raised a magical shield, blessed against dragon magic. The flames parted around him, and he stood in the center of the inferno, untouched. Clever, he snarled, but I came prepared. He reached into his pack and pulled out a harpoon, massive, steel, with barbed hooks and a chain attached. The head glowed with the same blue light as Wormbane, dragon slayer weapon, designed specifically to pierce scales. Caldress loaded the harpoon into a ballista, a portable one designed for hunting. He aimed at Asha's exposed chest. "For humanity!" he roared and pulled the trigger. The harpoon flew. It would have struck Asha's heart, would have punched through her scales and buried itself in vital organs, would have killed her. But Garret moved. He threw himself into the harpoon's path. The weapon struck him in the chest, just left of center. The force of impact lifted him off his feet and slammed him backward. He hit the stone bridge hard, the harpoon embedded deep, and lay still. Father. Asha's roar was anguish-made sound. She lunged forward, her massive form thundering across the bridge. Caldress tried to run, but he was too slow. Her jaws closed around him, not crushing, but holding. She lifted him into the air, dangling him over the gorge. "You took my mother. You burned my city. You tried to take my father. Give me one reason not to drop you." Caldress struggled, but it was useless. I was doing my duty, following orders, protecting humanity from what? Children? From history? From beauty? Asha's grip tightened slightly, and Caldress whimpered, "You're not protecting humanity. You're destroying anything you don't understand, anything you fear. Dragons are a threat. They always have been. I'm one dragon, one child, raised by a human. I've never hurt anyone who didn't try to hurt me first. And you want to kill me because of what I might do? Yes, because if you live, if you breed, they'll come back. The dragons will return, and humanity will be enslaved again. We were never your enslavers." Asha's voice was thunder. "That's the lie they told you. Dragons and humans lived in peace. We protected you, and you repaid us with genocide." She opened her jaws, preparing to drop him into the gorge. One flex of her jaw muscles, and Caldress would fall to his death. "Asha, no!" The voice was weak, but clear. Garret's voice. Asha turned her massive head. Her father was sitting up, one hand pressed to the harpoon in his chest, blood streaming between his fingers. "Don't," Garret gasped. "Don't become like them. Don't let hate make you a killer. He tried to kill you. I know, but Asha, you're better than this, better than me. Don't throw that away for revenge." Asha looked at Caldress, dangling from her jaws. She could kill him so easily. One bite, one drop. Justice for everything he'd done. But Garret was right. If she killed him, she became the monster they claimed she was. She proved them right, and she refused to do that. With a growl of frustration, Asha turned and threw Caldress back onto the bridge. He landed hard. The wind knocked from him. "Go. Take your hunters and leave. If I ever see you again, I won't be merciful a second time." Caldress scrambled backward, then turned and ran, his remaining hunters limping after him. Asha watched them go, then turned to Garret. She began to shrink, her dragon form melting away, scales becoming skin, wings folding into nothing. Within seconds she was human again, naked, covered in sweat, exhausted beyond measure. Ember appeared with Asha's discarded clothes in her jaws. Transformation tends to destroy fabric. Pro tip for the future. Asha dressed quickly, then ran to Garret. He was pale, his breathing shallow. The harpoon had gone deep. Too deep. No. Asha's hands hovered over the weapon, afraid to touch it. "Father, hold on. I'll get help. There's no help," Garret said quietly. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Not for this. Don't say that. You're going to be fine. You have to be fine. Asha. Garret's hand found hers. I'm proud of you. So proud. You're going to be magnificent. The dragons, they live on, through you. Stop talking like you're dying. I am dying. Garret managed a weak smile. But that's okay. I've made peace with it, with what I did. Because of you. Because you showed me dragons weren't monsters. They were people. And I'm sorry for all of it. I know you are. But please don't leave me. I can't do this alone. You're not alone. You have Ember. And you have yourself. You're stronger than you know. His eyes were starting to close. Father, Asha shook him. Stay with me, please. Ember moved beside her. Asha, there's one thing, one possibility, but it's dangerous. I don't care. Tell me. Dragon magic. The old magic. Your mother's magic. It can heal, but at a cost. You'd have to give part of yourself, part of your essence, and if you give too much, I'll die. Or worse, you could lose your dragon nature entirely, become fully human, no fire, no transformation, just human. Asha looked at Garret, barely breathing, then at her hands, still crackling with residual silver energy. It wasn't a choice at all. Tell me what to do. Listen carefully, Ember said, her voice unusually serious. Dragon essence, the core of what you are, can be shared. It's ancient magic, older than civilization. Dragons used it to bond with each other, to heal mortal wounds, to save those they loved. Just tell me how. Asha's voice was desperate. You need to take one of your scales, even in human form they exist beneath your skin, and embed it in his chest, over his heart. Then you channel your fire, your life force, through it. The scale will act as a conduit, healing his wound and transforming him. Transforming him? He'll become dragonborn, part human, part dragon. He'll live longer, heal faster. He might even develop minor abilities. But Asha... Ember's eyes were grave. This will bind you together, forever, your life to his. If you die, the scale dies, and so does he, and vice versa. I don't care, do it. And you need to understand, giving up a scale is giving up part of yourself. You'll be weaker, possibly forever. Your transformation might be incomplete. Your fire might... I said I don't care. Asha's hands were already glowing. He's my father. I'm not letting him die. Ember nodded slowly. Then place your hand over your heart. Feel for the scale. It will be warm. Pull it free. Asha pressed her hand to her chest. At first she felt nothing. Then, there, a warmth, a hardness beneath her skin that didn't belong to human anatomy. She focused, willing the scale to come forward. It hurt. Gods, it hurt, like tearing away part of her soul. But she gritted her teeth and pulled. A silver scale, the size of her palm, emerged from her chest. It glowed with inner light, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Now what? Asha gasped, sweat beading on her forehead. The harpoon. You need to remove it first. Asha grabbed the weapon's shaft with both hands and pulled. It came free with a sickening sound, and blood poured from the wound. Garret's eyes flew open and he screamed, then went limp. Father! Asha's hand shook as she pressed the scale against his chest, directly over the wound. Please work. Please, please work. She channeled her fire. Silver flames erupted from her hands, flowing into the scale, through it, into Garret's body. The scale began to sink into his flesh, merging with him, becoming part of him. Light blazed beneath his skin. His whole body arched, and his eyes snapped open, but they weren't his normal eyes. For a moment, they blazed with silver light, dragon light. Then the light faded, and Garret collapsed back onto the bridge, gasping for breath. The wound in his chest was gone. In its place was the silver scale, embedded in his flesh like a second heart. Did it work? Asha whispered, afraid to hope. Garret's hand moved to his chest, touching the scale. He could feel it, warm, alive, pulsing with energy that wasn't his own. I can feel you, he said, his voice filled with wonder. Your heartbeat, your emotions, like we're connected. You are, Ember said. She saved you and bound herself to you in the process. You're dragonborn now, part of both worlds. Garret sat up slowly. His wounds, all of them, not just the harpoon injury, were healing before their eyes. The cuts closed, the bruises faded, even old scars began to soften. How do you feel? Asha asked. Strong, stronger than I have in years, like I'm 20 again. Garret flexed his hands, marveling. Asha, what have you done? Saved you, the same way you saved me 20 years ago. Asha tried to smile, but exhaustion was pulling at her. Now we're even. She swayed, and Garret caught her before she fell. Easy. You've given up a lot of energy. You need to rest. We can't. Caldris and his hunters are gone, for now. Garret looked toward the mouth of the valley where the hunters had fled. But they'll regroup, bring reinforcements. We need to move. Find somewhere defensible. I know a place, Ember said. Not far from here, the Sanctuary of Silver Flame. It's an ancient temple built by dragons in honor of Zephyr's lineage. It's protected by old magic. Caldris's order can't enter it. How far? Garret asked. Half a day's travel, through that canyon. Ember indicated a narrow pass to the north. But we need to move now. I can smell them already. Caldris didn't run away. He's circling around, preparing to trap us. Garret stood, lifting Asha in his arms. She was too exhausted to protest. Lead the way. They left the bridge and entered the canyon, Ember trotting ahead, her senses extended for danger. The canyon was claustrophobic, barely 10 feet wide in places, with sheer walls rising hundreds of feet on either side. The sky was a thin ribbon of blue overhead, perfect place for an ambush. They'd been walking for an hour when Ember stopped suddenly. No, this is bad. What? Garret set Asha down, his hand going to Wormbane. They've been hurting us this whole time. Caldris knew about the sanctuary. He's been pushing us toward it. Why would he do that? Asha asked. Her question was answered by the sound of rocks falling. They looked up. The canyon walls were lined with hunters. At least 100 of them. Caldris must have sent for reinforcements. They held crossbows, all aimed downward, at Garret and Asha, and at the narrow points of the canyon, both ahead and behind. Massive ballistas were being wheeled into position, not the portable kind Caldris had used on the bridge. War machines, designed to bring down flying dragons. They were trapped. Caldris appeared on a ledge above them, looking down with grim satisfaction. Did you really think I'd let you escape? That I'd give up after one failure? He gestured to the assembled forces. I sent word the moment we found you. Every hunter within a week's ride has converged here. You're surrounded, outgunned, and there's nowhere left to run. Garret looked around, calculating angles, distances, possibilities. There were none. Even with his new dragonborn strength, he couldn't fight 100 trained warriors, and Asha was too exhausted to transform. They were finished. Last chance, Caldris called down. Garret Steelheart, you were once a brother, a hero. The Order will grant you mercy if you surrender the dragon. We'll make her death quick, painless, and you can walk away. Live the rest of your life in peace. That's not mercy, Garret said. That's murder. It's necessity. She's too dangerous to live. Surely you see that now. She's already killed a dozen of my men. How many more will die if she's allowed to survive, to grow, to breed? She killed them defending herself. You attacked her. Because she's an abomination. Caldress's voice rose, cracking with emotion. Dragons burned my family, killed everyone I loved, and you want me to let the last one live? To let her have the chance to bring them back? So that was it. Personal vendetta disguised as holy mission. Your family's death was tragedy, Garret said, but killing Asha won't bring them back. It just perpetuates the cycle. More death, more hatred. When does it end? When every dragon is dead. Caldress drew his sword. And if you won't step aside, then you die with her. Fire! 100 crossbows loosed simultaneously. Garret grabbed Asha and dove behind a large boulder, the only cover in the narrow canyon. Bolts hammered into the stone, chipping it, sending shards flying. "We need to move," Ember shouted. "That boulder won't hold long." "Where?" Garret shouted back. "We're boxed in." "The walls! Asha can climb. Her dragon's strength. She's too weak. She can barely stand." A bolt ricocheted off the stone and grazed Garret's shoulder, drawing blood. The dragonborn healing kicked in immediately, sealing the wound, but it was a reminder they were running out of time. Asha forced herself to her feet, leaning heavily against the boulder. "Father, you need to run. Distract them while you escape." I'll hold them off." "Absolutely not. I'm too tired to transform, too weak to fight. But you're not. You're faster now, stronger. You can make it out." "I'm not leaving you." "Father, I said no!" Garret's voice was raw. "I spent 20 years living with the guilt of what I did to your mother. I won't spend the rest of my life knowing I abandoned her daughter. If we die here, we die together." Asha stared at him, then nodded. Together. Ember's fur was bristling, her tail burning brighter than ever. "You two are impossibly stubborn. Fine. If we're making a last stand, let's make it count. Asha, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Give me your fire, all of it, every last spark." "What? Why?" "Because I'm a fire spirit. Fire is literally what I am. If you channel all your remaining power into me, I can become something bigger, something that might actually scare these idiots." "That will kill you," Asha protested. Maybe not. Fire spirits are hard to kill, but either way, it's our only shot." The crossbow bolts continued to rain down. One of the ballistas fired, and a massive bolt, 6 feet long, as thick as a man's arm, slammed into the boulder, cracking it down the middle. They were out of time. "Do it," Garret said. "Ember, do it." Asha placed her hands on Ember's small body. The firefox felt fragile, delicate, but there was strength in her too. Ancient, primordial strength. Asha closed her eyes and let go. Every spark of fire within her, every bit of dragon flame, every ounce of magical energy poured out. Into Ember, into the spirit who had been her teacher, her friend, her constant sarcastic companion. Ember began to grow, first to the size of a wolf, then a horse, then larger still. Her form became less solid, more flame than flesh. Her eyes blazed like miniature suns. Her tail became a whip of pure fire that scorched the canyon floor. Within seconds she was massive, a fox made of living flame, 30 feet tall, radiating heat so intense the stone beneath her paws turned molten. The crossbow fire stopped. The hunters on the canyon walls stared in horror. Ember threw back her head and howled. It was a sound like a wildfire-given voice, terrible and beautiful and utterly inhuman. Then she lunged. She leapt at the canyon wall, her claws finding purchase on stone that should have been too smooth to climb. She scrambled upward with impossible speed, leaving trails of fire in her wake. The hunters scattered, screaming. Some tried to shoot her. Their bolts passed through her flaming form harmlessly. Ember reached the top of the canyon and pounced into the midst of the hunters. She didn't kill them, just scattered them, burned their weapons, sent them fleeing in terror. A massive elemental made of pure fire, unleashed in confined space. It was chaos. Caldrus tried to restore order, shouting commands, but his men were too panicked. They'd signed up to hunt dragons, not fight embodied fire itself. "Go!" Ember's voice boomed in Garret's and Asha's minds. "While they're distracted, run!" Garret didn't argue. He lifted Asha again and ran, sprinting through the canyon toward the north exit. Behind them, Ember's massive form continued to wreak havoc, buying them precious seconds. They burst out of the canyon into an open valley, and there, carved into a cliff face in the distance, was a massive archway glowing with soft silver light, the sanctuary of silver flame. Garret ran toward it, his dragonborn strength allowing him to cover ground faster than humanly possible. Asha clung to him, looking back over his shoulder. "Ember," she called out. "Ember!" The massive firefox form was shrinking now, the flames diminishing. Ember had expended enormous energy. She was burning out. "I'll be fine." Ember's voice was faint. "Go, get to the sanctuary. I'll catch up." The flames flickered, guttered, and then went out entirely. Ember's small form dropped from the canyon edge, falling toward the rocks below. "No!" Asha screamed. But there was nothing they could do. Garret couldn't reach her in time, couldn't save her. Ember fell. They reached the sanctuary moments later. The archway's glow intensified as they approached, and Garret felt resistance, like walking through water. Then they passed through, and the feeling vanished. They were inside. The sanctuary was carved into the mountain itself, a vast space with a high ceiling supported by natural columns of stone, and at the center, burning with eternal flame, was an altar. The silver flame, the sacred fire of Zephyra's lineage. Garret set Asha down gently. She immediately tried to turn back toward the entrance. "Ember, we have to go back for Ember." Garret grabbed her shoulders. "Asha, stop! Look!" He pointed to the entrance. Through the archway they could see Caldrus and his hunters approaching. But when they reached the threshold, they stopped, tried to push forward, couldn't. The sanctuary's magic was holding. "They can't enter," Garret said. "We're safe, for now. But Ember may or may not be alive. Fire spirits are resilient. If she survived the fall, she'll find a way back to us. And if she didn't?" Garret didn't have an answer to that. Outside, Caldrus stood at the barrier, his face twisted with fury. He couldn't enter, couldn't reach them, but he could wait. He turned to his hunters and began giving orders, setting up camp, positioning the ballistas to cover the entrance, preparing for a siege. "We're trapped," Asha said quietly. "Safe, but trapped." Garret looked around the sanctuary. There was food here, offerings left by ancient pilgrims, preserved by the magic. Water flowed from a spring in the back. They could survive for weeks, maybe months, but eventually they'd have to leave. And when they did, Caldrus would be waiting. "We'll figure something out," Garret said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We always do." Asha walked to the altar, to the silver flame. She stared into its depths, and the fire seemed to stare back, recognizing her, welcoming her home. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "Tired of running, tired of fighting, tired of being hunted just for existing." Garret joined her at the altar. "I know, but Asha, you survived. Against impossible odds, you survived. That counts for something." "Does it? Ember might be dead. You nearly died. We're trapped in here with an army outside. And for what? So I can live a few more days? A few more weeks?" "So you can live," Garret said firmly. "Period. You're the last Asha, the last dragon, the last keeper of their memories. If you die, They're truly gone, erased. Everything they were, everything they built, everything they dreamed, gone. You can't let that happen. That's too much pressure. I know, but it's the truth. Garret placed his hand over the scale in his chest. You gave me a second chance at life. Let me use it to help you. We'll find a way out of this. Together. Asha wanted to believe him, wanted to hope. But hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Outside, Caldris stood at the barrier, his eyes fixed on the sanctuary. He would wait. He had patience. And eventually, hunger or thirst or desperation would drive them out. And when it did, he'd be ready. The hunt wasn't over. It was only just beginning. 3 days passed. 3 days of living in the sanctuary while Caldris's army waited outside like patient vultures. 3 days of eating ancient preserved food and drinking spring water and trying not to think about what would happen when supplies ran out. 3 days without Ember. Asha spent most of that time at the altar, staring into the silver flame. Sometimes she thought she saw shapes in the fire, dragons flying through endless sky. Her ancestors, maybe, or just her imagination, desperate for connection. Garret trained. He tested the limits of his new dragonborn strength, amazed at what his body could now do. He could lift stones that would have broken him before. His reflexes were faster, his senses sharper. He could feel the world in ways he never had. The pulse of magic in the sanctuary, the distant heartbeat of the mountain, the connection to Asha through the scale in his chest. But none of it mattered if they couldn't escape. On the third night, Asha finally spoke. We can't stay here forever. I know, Garret said. He was sitting by the entrance, watching the hunters' campfires through the barrier. But the moment we step outside, they'll kill us. We need a plan. I have one. Asha's voice was quiet but firm. You're not going to like it. Try me. I surrender. I walk out there and give myself to Caldris. In exchange, he lets you go. Absolutely not. Father, I said no. Garret stood, his jaw set. We're not doing that. Why not? It's logical. I'm the one they want. You're just collateral damage at this point. If I remove myself from the equation, they'll kill you, and then probably me anyway, just to be thorough. Garret's voice rose. I didn't go through everything we've been through just to hand you over to a fanatic with a god complex. Then what's your plan? Asha demanded. We can't fight them. We can't sneak past them. We can't stay here forever. What option does that leave? Garret opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't have an answer. Before either could speak again, something changed. The silver flame flared, suddenly, violently. The light intensified until it was blinding, and both Garret and Asha had to shield their eyes. Then, from the flames, a voice spoke, not telepathically, audibly, a woman's voice, ancient and wise and achingly familiar. Daughter, my daughter, come closer. Asha's breath caught. Mother? I am not your mother. I am her echo, her memory, preserved in this flame, but I carry her love, her will, and her final gift. Asha approached the altar, trembling. What gift? The truth of what you are, the power you have not yet claimed. I don't understand. You have transformed once, briefly, instinctively, but you did not complete the transformation. You held back, afraid of losing your humanity. But Asha, the voice grew gentle. You are not fully human. You are not fully dragon. You are both. And in that duality lies strength greater than either form alone. I don't know how to access that strength. You do. You simply fear it. But the time for fear has passed. Outside these walls waits an army that will kill you if given the chance. You cannot run from them. You cannot hide from them. You must face them. And to do that, You must embrace your full nature. She's too weak, Garret said. The transformation before nearly killed her, and she gave up so much of her power to save me. Power can be restored. Life cannot. But Garret Steelheart. The voice turned to him. You carry her scale now. You are bound to her. That means her power flows through you as well. You can give back what she gave, but only if you're willing to risk the transformation yourself. Garret blinked. Risk what transformation? You are dragonborn. You carry dragon essence. Under the right circumstances, with the right catalyst, you could transform partially. Take on dragon traits without losing your human form. Become something between what you were and what she is. And the risk? The transformation might not be reversible. You could become trapped between forms, neither fully human nor fully dragon, a creature of two worlds, belonging to neither. Garret didn't hesitate. I'll do it. Father, no! Asha grabbed his arm. You don't know what you're agreeing to. I know exactly what I'm agreeing to. Garret placed his hand over the scale in his chest. You saved me. Now let me return the favor. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's what family does. Asha's eyes filled with tears. You're insane. Probably. Garret managed a small smile. Must run in the family. Then approach the flame. The voice commanded. Both of you, place your hands in the fire. Do not fear it. It will not burn you. It will transform you. They approached the altar together. The silver flame danced and flickered, beckoning. Garret took Asha's hand. Together? Together, she agreed. They reached out, and their hands entered the flame. The pain was immediate and absolute. Not physical pain. This was something deeper. Soul-level pain. Every cell in their bodies screamed as ancient magic rewrote their very essence. Garret felt his bones shifting, lengthening. His muscles expanded, tearing and reforming stronger. His skin hardened in places, scales erupting along his arms, his shoulders, his spine. His senses exploded. He could suddenly smell everything, hear everything, feel every vibration in the stone beneath his feet. And the power, God's, the power. It flowed through him like liquid fire, burning away weakness, igniting strength he'd never imagined. Beside him, Asha was transforming too, but not into the full dragon form she'd taken before. Something different, something between. Her body grew taller, more muscular. Her skin took on a silvery sheen, scales appearing in intricate patterns across her arms and legs. Her eyes blazed with inner light, and from her back, wings emerged, not the full massive wings of a dragon, but smaller, more compact, enough to glide, to maneuver, but not to bear her full dragon weight. She was beautiful, terrible, something out of legend. The transformation completed, and they collapsed to their knees, gasping. Garret looked at his hands. They were still recognizably human, but silver scales now covered the backs of his fingers and forearms. His nails had become claws, short but sharp as razors. He could feel new muscles in his back, along his spine, places that had never existed before. What happened to us?" he whispered. "You have become what dragons and humans were always meant to be," the voice from the flame said. "A bridge between worlds, dragon-hearted, human-minded, the best of both races." Asha flexed her wings experimentally. They responded, spreading wide, and she felt the air currents moving across the membranes. I can feel everything. The mountain, the stone, the lives outside. It's overwhelming. You will adapt, but now you must act. The enemy waits, and they will not stop until you are dead. So you must show them something they cannot ignore, something that will make them reconsider their hatred. "What?" Garret asked. What can possibly make them reconsider? Mercy, power tempered with compassion. They believe dragons are monsters. Prove them wrong. The flame began to diminish, the voice fading. This is my final gift, daughter of Zephyra. Use it wisely. And remember, you are not the last dragon. You are the first of something new, something better. The flame returned to its normal size, and the voice was gone. Garret and Asha stood slowly, testing their new forms. Everything felt different, strange, but also right. Like they'd been incomplete before, and now they were whole. We should test these transformations, Garret said. Make sure we can control them before... An explosion rocked the sanctuary. They spun toward the entrance. Outside, Caldris had brought up something new, a massive siege engine, a ram covered in blessed steel and enchanted against magic. He was trying to break down the barrier. He's insane, Asha breathed. That magic is centuries old. It can't be broken by... The barrier flickered. It could be broken. Another impact. The barrier flickered again, weakening. Caldris had found a vulnerability, and he was exploiting it. We're out of time, Garret said. He drew Wormbane, and in his transformed state, the sword felt light as a feather. Ready? Asha summoned her fire. Silver flames wreathed her hands, brighter and stronger than before. Ready? The barrier shattered. Caldris's army poured in, screaming war cries, weapons raised. 100 hunters, all focused on killing 2 people. Garret and Asha met them at the threshold. The battle was like nothing either had experienced before. Garret moved with speed that made him a blur. His dragonborn strength let him tear through armor like paper. His scales deflected blades that should have cut him, and the connection to Asha, the bond through the scale, let them fight as one, anticipating each other's moves, covering each other's weaknesses. Asha's fire was no longer a weapon of last resort. It was an extension of her will. She didn't just throw flames. She shaped them, controlled them, made them dance to her command. Walls of fire separated enemies. Precise bolts of flame disarmed hunters without killing them. She was in complete control, but there were so many. For every hunter they dropped, 2 more took his place. They were being overwhelmed. Garret felt a blade slip past his guard and bite deep into his side. The dragonborn healing kicked in immediately, but it was slower this time. He was running out of energy. Asha's wings were torn from multiple crossbow hits. She couldn't glide anymore, could barely move. They were back to back now, surrounded, bleeding, exhausted. This was it, the end. Caldris pushed through his hunters, his blessed sword in hand. You fought well. I'll give you that, but it's over. Lay down your weapons, accept your fate. Garret raised Wormbane one more time. Never. Then die with honor. Caldris raised his sword for the killing blow, and the mountain exploded. Not literally, but that's what it felt like. A geyser of flame erupted from the ground between Caldris and his prey, a pillar of fire so intense it forced everyone back, shielding their eyes. And from the flames, a familiar voice spoke. Touch them and burn. The pillar coalesced, taking shape. A fox, small, cat-sized, her fur the color of autumn leaves. Ember. She looked exhausted, her flames dimmer than usual, but she was alive. Miss me? She said, her mental voice dripping with her usual sarcasm. Ember! Asha's voice was joy and relief. You're alive! Of course I'm alive. I'm a fire spirit. We're notoriously hard to kill. Ember limped toward them, favoring one leg. Though I'll admit, that fall was unpleasant. Would not recommend. How did you find us? I followed the catastrophically bad decisions and magical explosions. Figured you 2 would be at the center of them. Caldris recovered from his shock. It doesn't matter. One more spirit won't save you. Attack! The hunters charged again, And Asha made a decision. She'd spent her whole life trying to be human, trying to fit in, trying to hide what she was. No more. She was a dragon, the last dragon, and it was time to show them what that meant. Asha closed her eyes and let go of every restraint, every fear, every doubt. The transformation was instant. Her body exploded outward, growing, expanding. Scales erupted across every inch of skin. Her spine elongated. Her wings reformed, massive and powerful. In seconds, she was no longer human at all. She was a dragon, a full, complete, magnificent silver dragon. And this time, she didn't hold back. Asha reared up to her full height, 40 feet from ground to shoulder, and roared. The sound was thunder made flesh. It shook the valley. It resonated in every hunter's bones, and it carried a single message. Enough. The hunters froze, staring up at her in terror. She could kill them, all of them. One breath of fire, and they'd be ash. But she didn't. Instead, she spoke. Her voice was like her mother's had been, layered, echoing, impossible to ignore. I am Asha, daughter of Zephyra, last of the silver dragons, and I am done running. Caldrus tried to rally his men. Don't listen to it. It's a trick, a dragon's lies. I do not lie, Asha said, her massive head swiveling to face him. That is your specialty. You were told dragons were monsters, beasts, threats. But look at me, look at me. She spread her wings wide and silver light emanated from her scales. Not threatening, just beautiful. I am intelligent, I am aware, I think, I feel, I love. Everything you do, I do. The only difference between us is that you were born human and I was born dragon. Does that make me a monster? Yes, Caldrus shouted, because you're dangerous. You could kill us all. I could, Asha agreed. Easily, but I won't. Because unlike you, I don't kill those who are helpless. I don't slaughter children. I don't commit genocide. The words hit like physical blows. Some of the hunters looked away, shame on their faces. My mother was wise. She was kind. She spent centuries trying to build peace between our peoples. And you murdered her. You murdered all of them. An entire sentient species erased. And for what? Because you were afraid? We had reason to be afraid, one of the hunters shouted. Dragons burned villages, killed people. Some did, Asha acknowledged, and they were wrong, just as some humans kill, some steal, some commit terrible acts, but you don't judge all humans by their worst members. Why judge all dragons by ours? Silence fell over the valley. Asha looked at the assembled hunters, at their faces, their fear, their uncertainty. I could kill you. I could take revenge for what you've done to my people. And no one would blame me, but I won't, because revenge doesn't end the cycle. It just perpetuates it. She lowered her massive head until she was eye level with Caldrus. I'm sorry for what happened to your family, truly. That was a tragedy, but killing me won't bring them back, and it won't protect humanity. It will just make you a murderer, like the dragon who killed them. Caldrus's hand trembled on his sword. You're trying to manipulate me. I'm trying to give you a choice. Let go of your hatred, walk away, or fight me, and I'll defend myself. But if we fight, people will die. Your people, maybe even you. Is that really what you want? Caldrus stared at her, and for the first time, doubt entered his eyes. He'd spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment, training to kill the last dragon, living for revenge. But now, faced with that dragon, seeing her intelligence, her mercy, her refusal to be the monster he'd expected, he didn't know what to do. His sword lowered, just an inch, but enough. Stand down, he said quietly. What? One of his lieutenants looked at him in shock. Master Caldrus, we can still... I said stand down, Caldress's voice cracked. She's not what I expected. None of this is what I expected. The hunters slowly lowered their weapons. Asha transformed back to her hybrid form, human-shaped but with scales and wings. She approached Caldress, stopping just out of sword range. Thank you, she said, for choosing mercy. Don't thank me yet, Caldress said bitterly. The Order won't accept this. There will be others, hunters who won't stop. Then we'll face them, Garret said, limping forward. Together. Caldress looked at him, at the man who had once been the Order's greatest warrior, now standing beside a dragon. You've changed, Steelheart. So have you, just now. Caldress was quiet for a moment. Then he sheathed his sword and turned to his hunters. We're leaving. This hunt is over. But it's over! Caldress's voice carried authority that wouldn't be questioned. The dragon has shown us mercy. The least we can do is return it. Anyone who wants to continue this crusade can do so alone. But the Order, as long as I lead it, is done hunting Asha. He walked toward the valley exit. Slowly, reluctantly, his hunters followed. Garret, Asha, and Ember watched them go. When the last hunter had disappeared from sight, Asha collapsed to her knees, exhaustion finally overwhelming her. Is it really over? She whispered. For now, Garret said, kneeling beside her. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Ember curled up between them. Well, that was dramatic. Think we can have one day without almost dying? Despite everything, Asha laughed. Probably not. Figured. Ember yawned. But hey, we're alive. We're together. And we just talked down an army of fanatics without killing anyone. I call that a win. A win, Asha agreed. She looked at Garret, at her father, transformed now into something between human and dragon. At Ember, battered but unbroken. At the sanctuary behind them, still glowing with ancient magic. And for the first time since learning the truth about what she was, Asha felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. They would survive this, somehow, together, because that's what families did. Even impossible, dysfunctional cross-species families bound by tragedy and redemption. They survived, and more than that, they loved. The journey to the sanctuary of Silver Flame, the real one, not the waypoint they'd sheltered in, took 2 weeks. Garret, Asha, and Ember traveled slowly, carefully, avoiding populated areas. Word of what had happened in the valley was spreading. Some stories painted Asha as a monster who'd defeated an army. Others painted her as a miracle, a dragon who'd chosen peace over violence. Neither version was entirely accurate, but Asha was learning that truth and legend rarely aligned. They reached the sanctuary at dawn on the 15th day. It was built into the side of a mountain, accessible only by a narrow path that wound up through the clouds. The structure itself was ancient, older than Eternus, older perhaps than dragons themselves. Built by some forgotten civilization that had revered the silver flame as sacred. The entrance was a massive archway carved with runes that glowed as Asha approached, recognizing her bloodline, welcoming her home. Inside, the sanctuary was vast. Pillars of white stone held up a ceiling, painted with scenes of dragons and humans living in harmony. The floor was polished obsidian that reflected the light from the central altar, and at that altar burned the true silver flame, not an echo or memory, but the real thing, the eternal fire that had burned for millennia, fed by dragon magic. Garret stopped at the threshold, suddenly unsure. Can I even enter? I'm not your family, Asha said simply, taking his hand. That's all that matters. They approached the altar together. Garret's wounds had fully healed during the journey, the dragonborn transformation making him stronger and more resilient than he'd ever been. But there were scars now, not on his body, but on his soul. Scars left by years of guilt and regret. As they neared the flame, Garret felt something unexpected. Warmth, not physical heat, but emotional warmth. Comfort, like coming home after a long, terrible journey. The flame seemed to be forgiving him. "Asha," he said quietly, "I don't deserve this, any of this. After what I did, you deserve a chance," Asha interrupted. "Everyone does. Even people who've made terrible mistakes. My mother understood that. That's why she asked you to protect me instead of cursing you. She saw something worth saving in you." "And do you?" Garret asked. "See something worth saving?" Asha looked at him, at the man who'd killed her mother and then spent 20 years raising her daughter, who'd protected her, trained her, loved her in his broken, inadequate way. "Yes," she said, "I see a father." Garret's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for everything, for the lies, for the pain, for all of it." "I know," Asha squeezed his hand, "and I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I choose to, because forgiveness is how we break the cycle." They stood there for a long moment, bathed in the light of the silver flame. Then Ember's voice broke the silence. "So, are we just going to stand here having emotional moments? Or are we going to address the giant dragon egg in the corner?" "The what?" Asha turned. Ember was sitting beside something Asha had missed in the emotional intensity of the moment. A large stone basin filled with what looked like liquid silver, and floating in that liquid was an egg, a dragon egg, silver, about the size of a wine barrel, covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with soft light. Asha approached it slowly, her breath caught in her throat. How is this possible? I'm the last. There shouldn't be any more eggs." "It's not a natural egg," Ember explained. "It's a gift. From the silver flame, from your mother's essence. When a dragon dies, their magic doesn't disappear. It returns to the world. And sometimes, under the right circumstances, in places of great power, that magic can coalesce, can form something new." "You're saying this egg was created by my mother's magic? And every other silver dragon who ever died, all their collective essence, their knowledge, their love, poured into this, a second chance for the species." Asha placed her hand on the egg's surface. It was warm, pulsing gently, and she could feel something inside, a presence, young, innocent, waiting. "How long until it hatches?" Garret asked. "Years, maybe decades. Dragon eggs take a long time to mature, but when it does hatch..." Ember's tail swished thoughtfully. "You'll have a brother or sister, someone to share the burden of being the last dragon, except you won't be the last anymore." Asha felt tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were relief, joy, hope. She wasn't alone, would never be truly alone again. "I'll protect it," she said. "Guard it, make sure it hatches safely, and when my sibling emerges, I'll teach them everything, about what we are, about our history, about the dragons who came before us." "That's good," Ember said. "But Asha, you can't spend the rest of your life hiding in this sanctuary. The egg will be safe here, the magic will protect it. But you have work to do in the world." "What work?" "Showing people that dragons aren't monsters, building bridges between species, becoming the living proof that humans and dragons can coexist." Ember looked at Garret. "You're already doing it. You and your father. He's dragonborn now. You're human enough to walk among people. Together you can change minds, change history." Asha looked at Garret. "Is that what you want? To leave this place? Keep traveling? Keep fighting?" I want whatever you want, Garret said. For 20 years my purpose was protecting you, and that hasn't changed. If you want to stay here, we stay. If you want to go out into the world, we go. I'm with you. Always. Asha thought about it. About the sanctuary's safety. About the egg waiting to hatch. About the world outside. Dangerous, unpredictable, but also full of possibility. We go, she said finally. We can visit the egg regularly, make sure it's safe. But Ember's right. Hiding doesn't change anything. If people are going to accept dragons, they need to know us, really know us, and that means putting ourselves out there. Brave choice, Ember said. Stupid, but brave. Story of my life, Asha said with a smile. They spent 3 more days at the sanctuary resting and recovering. Asha practiced her transformations, learning to shift smoothly between full dragon, hybrid form, and completely human appearance. Garret trained with his new abilities, amazed at what he could now do. And they talked, really talked, about the past, about Zephyra, about the dragons and what had been lost, about the future and what might be built. On the morning of the 4th day they prepared to leave. Asha stood before the egg one last time, placing both hands on its surface. I'll come back, she promised, and when you hatch, you'll have a family waiting for you. I swear it. The egg pulsed warmly, as if it understood. They left the sanctuary and began the long descent from the mountain. Below them the world stretched out, vast and complex and dangerous, but also full of hope. Where do we go first? Garret asked. Everywhere, Asha said. Every village, every town, every city. We show them what dragons can be. We help people. We save lives. We prove that we're not the enemy. That's going to take years, Ember pointed out. I have years. Dragons live for centuries, remember? I'm just getting started. They walked in silence for a while, descending through clouds. Then Garret spoke. You know, when I found you 20 years ago, I thought my life was over, that I'd destroyed everything worth protecting. But you gave me a second chance, a reason to keep going. And now, he looked at his scaled hands, at the proof of his transformation. Now I'm something I never imagined, something between what I was and what you are. Dragonborn, Asha said, a bridge between worlds. Is that what we are? Bridges? Maybe, or maybe we're just family, and family doesn't need labels. Garret smiled, a real, genuine smile, the first Asha had seen in weeks. Family, I like that. It's very touching, Ember said, but can we focus on the practical matters? Like where we're sleeping tonight? Because I don't know about you two, but I'd prefer a roof over my head. There's a town at the base of the mountain, Garret said. We can... He stopped. They all did. Below them, at the base of the mountain, smoke was rising. Not from chimneys, from buildings on fire. Bandits, Garret said immediately. Or raiders. The town's under attack. Asha's eyes blazed silver. Then we stopped them. Asha, we just decided to help people, not jump into every fight. This is helping people. Asha spread her wings. Come on, they need us. She leaped from the path, her wings catching air, and glided toward the burning town. Garret and Ember followed, Garret running with dragonborn speed, Ember racing alongside him, her flames leaving scorch marks on the stone. They reached the town in minutes. It was chaos. Raiders on horseback, terrorizing villagers, looting buildings. Maybe 20 raiders total. Asha landed in the town square with a sound like thunder. Her hybrid form was intimidating but not terrifying. Human enough to communicate, dragon enough to command respect. Enough! Her voice carried across the square. Leave these people alone. The raiders turned, saw her, and laughed. Their leader, a scarred man with a cruel smile, rode forward. And what are you supposed to be? Some kind of street performer? Asha's eyes blazed and silver flames danced across her scales. I'm a dragon, and you have 5 seconds to leave before I show you what that means. The laughter died. The leader's horse reared in fear, smelling predator. You're lying. Dragons are extinct. I'm right here, Asha said calmly. And I'm giving you a choice. Leave peacefully or leave burning. Your choice. The leader looked at his men, then at Asha, then at Garret, emerging from a side street with wormbane drawn and scales glinting on his arms. Retreat! The leader shouted. Retreat! The raiders fled, leaving their loot behind, desperate to escape the dragon and her armored companion. The villagers emerged from hiding, staring at Asha in wonder and fear. An elderly woman stepped forward. The town elder, maybe. You saved us. Who are you? My name is Asha, she said gently, transforming to her human appearance to look less threatening. And this is my father, Garret. We're travelers. We help where we can. But you're a dragon, I saw. I am, the last of my kind, but I'm not your enemy. Asha smiled. I'm your neighbor, and neighbors help each other, right? The elder stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she bowed. Thank you for saving us. We won't forget this. Other villagers began to bow, and Asha felt something unfamiliar in her chest. Acceptance, not fear, not hatred, just acceptance. Well, Ember said, materializing on a nearby roof. That went better than expected. Usually when you reveal you're a dragon, people throw things. Maybe people are ready to change, Asha said. Maybe they're tired of hate, or maybe you just saved their lives, Garret pointed out. That tends to make people more open-minded. Whatever the reason, it's a start. Asha looked around at the villagers, at their cautious but genuine gratitude. It's a start. They spent that night in the village. The elder offered them beds and food, and stories spread about the dragon who'd saved them. By morning, the fear had been replaced by curiosity. Children approached Asha, asking to see her wings. Adults thanked her, offered gifts. It was small, just one town, one moment. But it was proof that change was possible. When they left the next morning, the entire village gathered to see them off. The elder pressed a small token into Asha's hand, a wooden carving of a dragon in flight. So you remember us, the elder said, and so we remember you, the dragon who chose to help instead of harm. Asha held the carving carefully. I won't forget. They walked down the road, away from the village toward whatever came next. So, Ember said after a while, how does it feel, being a hero instead of a monster? Asha thought about it, about the fear she'd seen transform into gratitude, about the children who'd asked to touch her scales with wonder instead of terror. It feels, she said slowly, like hope. Hope is good, Garret said. Hope is what kept me going for 20 years, and now it's what will keep us going forward. They crested a hill, and below them the world spread out, forests and fields and distant mountains. Somewhere out there were more villages, more people who needed help, more chances to prove that dragons could be forces for good. And in the sanctuary, protected by ancient magic, an egg waited. The future of dragons, the beginning of something new. Asha transformed to her dragon form one more time, just to feel the joy of it. The wind in her wings, the power in her body, the freedom of being exactly what she was. She roared, not in anger or challenge, but in pure, exultant joy. And somewhere, in the wind, she thought she heard her mother's voice, one last time. Fly, my daughter, fly, and show them what dragons were always meant to be. Asha spread her wings wide and took to the sky. Garret watched her soar, his hand over the scale in his chest, feeling her joy through their bond. "She's magnificent," he said quietly. "She is," Ember agreed. "And you helped make her that way. That's worth something. Maybe redemption is possible after all." "Oh, it's possible. Doesn't mean it's easy, but you two are proof it can be done." Asha circled overhead once, then descended, transforming mid-flight to land beside them in human form. "Ready?" she asked, grinning. "Always," Garret said. "Let's go change the world," Ember said, "or die trying. Either way should be entertaining." And together, the last dragon, the redeemed slayer, and the sarcastic firefox, they walked toward the horizon, toward a future where dragons and humans could coexist, toward redemption, toward hope, toward home. The end.